both were posted on YouTube, and there were a number of violent incidents in the weeks and months leading up to Delaney's death. His grandmother's home where he lived was attacked. On another occasion, machetes were drawn and the police were involved. The court heard a meeting was held in a McDonald's restaurant involving members of both gangs and their parents and families in an attempt to calm the situation. The case continues.
The Coronation Street actor Bill Roache is expected to make a statement this morning after prosecutors said he'd be charged with 2 counts of raping a 15-year-old girl in the 1960s. ITV says Mr Roache will not appear in the soap until the legal proceedings are concluded. A 41-year-old man has been jailed for 3.5 years for his involvement in a series of thefts from hospitals, including the Lister in Stevenage. Lee Agnew has the details.
The court heard how in June last year, Adrian Garrick from Coventry stole a staff member's wallet before calling and tricking him into disclosing his bank details. He then withdrew £3,800 from his account. It was found that Garrick had committed 30 similar offences across the country over a 3-year period.
The Financial Conduct Authority says more than 1 million people with interest-only mortgages will not have set aside enough money when they have to pay off the balance. They predict the average shortfall will be £71,000. Martin Wheatley from the FCA says the figure should be a wake-up call.
The warning is actually you need to know that it is what it says on the tin. It's an interest-only mortgage. It means when it comes to the end, you have to repay the capital. And people need to understand that. And if you haven't got any savings in place or a system in place to repay the capital, you need to start working on how you're going to do that now.
In sport, Stadium MK will find out later this morning if it's a venue for the 2015 Rugby World Cup. 13 grounds will be chosen from a shortlist of 19. The weather, dry and bright with a top temperature of 15 degrees Celsius, that's 59 degrees Fahrenheit. There's more news and sport online at bbc.co.uk/3 counties. BBC 3 Counties Radio, first for news.
So one of the things we're looking at this morning, Catherine, is what annoys you most about the people you work with, okay?
Right, yeah.
Everybody in this building today has done or not done the same thing, and it has annoyed me.
What, we didn't roll out the red carpet, or...?
Well, no, Catherine. Can you think of anything that you have done or not done this morning, and the same with all of your, in inverted commas, colleagues, that would have, could possibly have upset me?
No.
Okay. No, that is it. You've all done it. Shameful. Morning, this is Iain Lee, 3 Counties Radio. Sorry I wasn't here yesterday. I was throwing up in a lay-by for an hour and a half. I wasn't sure whether you wanted to hear this or not. I thought, let's just say it, and you know that I had good reason for not being here. No photos to prove it, but if you look at the side of my car, Thank you to Justin, as always, for filling in. A few comments on the Facebook page would imply that some of you would perhaps like Justin to fill in a little bit more. I'm disappointed there. Should I read some of those comments? Paul Wood, Justin Dealey at breakfast, like it. Kathy Doran, Justin Dealey, far more professional, unbiased and less opinionated than Iain Lee. It's true. I apologise to both Kathy and Paul. I'm back, and boy, do I mean business this morning. Lots coming up on the show, including a fifth of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. The Borough Council says they want to do something about it. Well, we'll be looking at what can be done. It's not illegal. It may be morally and ethically dubious, but it's certainly not illegal. 08459 455 555. Criminals are conning hospital staff in Hertfordshire into handing over their bank details. I'll be meeting a woman who says they tried it on with her but failed. We'll hear her story in around 20 minutes. And what annoys you most about the people you work with? New research claims to have identified the ultimate nightmare colleague, Justin Dealey. Oh no, hang on. Sorry. New research claims to have identified the ultimate nightmare colleague. Justin Dealey's searching for them this morning. Sorry, I read that completely wrong. That's very rude. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. Send me a text, 81333. Start your text 3CR, or give me a phone call, 08459 455 555.
BBC 3 Counties Radio.
I'll tell you what's upset me about my work colleagues, although Kelly Betts who works on this show, has just redeemed herself. She's just redeemed herself. Now, on to far more serious matters. 1/5 of the infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. The statistics published by Luton Borough Council also shows the number of children who die in infancy in the town is 60% higher than the national average. Well, this evening, the council is holding a public meeting to discuss the issue. Joined now by Jerry Taylor, Director of Public Health at Luton Borough Council. Jerry, 1/5 of deaths linked to cousin marriage. It's a worrying statistic, isn't it?
Good morning. If I could just say that the figure that you have there is for all child deaths. The issues for infant mortality, which the council is looking at this evening, are around deaths for children that are born live and die in the first year of life. And the position that we have in Luton is that our figures are 5.2 deaths per 1,000 compared to the national average of 4.4 deaths per 1,000. And what we've seen recently is the figure for Luton is coming down. So there is some good news in terms of infant mortality.
So how many children are dying, either before they're born or after they're born, because they're cousins having sex with each other?
So the number of children dying each year in infant mortality, so being born live and dying in the first year of life, is about 18. We know that some of these deaths are due to hereditary conditions, and these are genetic conditions, and there are about 4 of those each year in the first year of life.
Why is the rate higher in Luton?
Well, genetic conditions obviously can be passed on more easily if there is a close relationship between the families, because they may be more likely to have a genetic hereditary condition that between the family that can be passed on, and we have a higher number of close relative marriages in Luton than in some other parts of the country.
Is there anything we can do to stop it? It's not fair, is it, if children are dying because of these unions?
Well, the way that we're looking at it in Luton is we're looking at it as we would in any other health risk. So some of the other health risks for infant mortality are things like smoking in pregnancy, maternal obesity, and sudden infant deaths in infancy. So these are all things that we've seen and that we're working on in terms of infant deaths.
So what how are you working on this? What are you going to be doing to tackle the problem of cousins marrying and having children that are dying?
So what we're looking at is what are the risks here and how we might tackle them. And we've looked at it. We've looked at other parts of the country where they have similar issues to see what they are doing.
Right, and what are they doing? What are you going to be doing?
We're treating it as we would other health risks.
Yes. What are you, Jerry? Sorry. What are you doing? What are you actually doing to stop this problem?
So the sort of approach that we are taking is making sure that people have the right information upon which to make their decisions. So making sure that people know what the health risks are and can act upon them accordingly in making their decisions. We also, as we would with any other health risk, are making sure that we have the right sort of services available for people. So there is a screening and genetic counselling service that people can access through their GP, and we're working with that service to make sure that they have some tailored information for the people of Luton to meet the particular health needs of Luton's population.
How keen do you think that people within the Pakistani community will be to take advantage of the genetic screening, of the counselling?
Well, I think that people are already using the genetic screening and counselling service, but I think that by providing people with the right information about the risks, by providing them with access to that service, because some people may not know that service exists, and in fact, some of it is about making sure GPs have the right information about when and how and whom to refer to the service, that will become more accessible and the take-up is likely to change.
It doesn't sound like a lot, Jerry, to be honest. If children are dying, just handing out leaflets and making people aware of what's going on at their GP, it doesn't really sound much.
It's not only about handing out leaflets. What we've started to do is really work with communities in Luton. So to find out about the issues that relate to those particular decisions in life, and make sure that we're targeting the work very much to meet people's needs. So it's working with communities over time.
Cousins marrying cousins, I've always been brought up to believe, I know it's legal, it's wrong, isn't it?
No, I would not say that. It's not about making any...
but it's ethically and morally it's wrong, isn't it? Particularly if it's dangerous towards any children.
The responsibility of Luton Borough Council is to look at the health needs of the population and try and improve that health.
So you think it's acceptable for cousins to marry cousins and have children?
That's what we're focusing on.
You think that's acceptable?
On the health needs of the population.
Jerry, do you think that's acceptable for cousins to marry cousins and have children?
I think that the issue for me is around people's health needs and trying to focus on those. It's not about making judgments.
No, but do you personally think it's acceptable?
I think that it's legal in this country to do so, and what my role is to think about the health.
Jerry, nice fence sitting. Thank you very much indeed. 08459 455 555. Jerry Taylor, Director of Public Health at Luton Borough Council. I'll say it now. It's wrong, isn't it? It's morally and ethically wrong. I know it's legal. Listen, I've got a hot cousin. Trust me, she's hot, but it's not right, is it? I'm going to get in trouble again today, aren't I? Different community this time. 08459 455 555. What do you think? Hey, listen, this is a long shot. If you've married your cousin, I would love to speak to you this morning. I know it's a long shot. But if you have... 08459 455 555. Am I wrong on this? I just think it just sounds wrong to me. Producer Laura, put your headphones on. Yeah, that's you. Yeah. You have no idea what you've done. We're talking about bad work colleagues and bad behaviour at work. You have no idea what you've done to me today, have you?
No, do. I feel quite bad. I feel a bit guilty. You've
Good.
said all of my colleagues today have annoyed me. They've all done the same thing.
Yeah.
I've been nothing but lovely today to you.
There's something that you, Work Experience Ali, Catherine Boyle, Dealey, none of you have done.
Unless it was not making you a great cup of tea. I can't think of anything.
Kelly Beck's made me an adequate cup of tea. No, well, just keep thinking, scratching your head. You'll get there eventually. Unbelievable. So rude. So rude. Right, let's get the travel news now. James Worley. He's not rude at all. He's delightful.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Very kind of you, Ian. Let's start on the A1M. Northbound was partially blocked. In fact, was blocked for a wee while between 6 and 7. That's Welwyn Garden City up to Stevenage because of an accident. A rolling roadblock was put in earlier. We've seen on camera that's now been lifted. So A1M northbound fully open between Welwyn and Stevenage. Southbound M1 moving pretty well at the moment. No significant delays from what I can see on camera. Certainly busy, especially 9 down to 8 actually looking at the latest images. M25's running well through the roadworks at the moment between 23 South Mims and 25 Enfield. No reported problems finally on trains across the three counties. I'm James Worley, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you very much, James. Right, it's 6:17. It's Thursday, the 2nd of May. I'm Iain Lee, and these are your headlines on BBC Three Counties Radio. New figures suggest that 20% of infant deaths in Luton are due to genetic conditions linked to marriage between cousins. A jury at Luton Crown Court has been told violent gang rivalry led to the death of a teenager who was deliberately knocked off his bike. In sport, the defending world snooker champion Ronnie O'Sullivan says he won't be returning to the Crucible even if he wins a 5th title. The weather today in Beds, Hearts and Bucks, dry and bright with a top temperature of 15 degrees. Coming up, criminals are conning hospital staff in Hertfordshire into handing over their bank details. Well, I'll be meeting a woman who says they tried it on with her but failed. We'll hear her story before 6:30. 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
When you need local news.
The headlines: dental nurse accused of poisoning in Bedfordshire, residents lose legal battle against Buckinghamshire incinerator, and controversy over new universal benefit.
When you need local travel.
It's around 10 minutes delays on the southbound side of the M1.
When you need local weather. BBC Three Counties Radio is here.
And temperatures are on the up. We should get to the mid-teens. Some places will get to the high teens.
BBC Three Counties Radio and bbc.co.uk/Three Counties.
I'm here, just like I said, though it's breaking every rule I've ever made. My racing heart is just the same. Why make it strong to break it once again? And I'd love to say I do, give everything to you, but I can never now be true. So I say, I think I better leave right now before I fall any deeper. I think I better leave right now, feeling weaker and weaker. Somebody better show me how before I fall any deeper. I think I better leave right now. I'm here, so please explain why you're opening up a healing wound again. I'm a little more careful, perhaps it shows, but if I lose the highs, at least I'm spared the lows. And I would tremble in your arms. What could be the harm to feel my spirit calm? So I say, I think I better leave right now before I fall any deeper. I think I better leave right now, feeling weaker and weaker. Somebody better show me out before I fall any deeper. I think I better leave right now. I wouldn't know how to say how good it feels.
Will Young there. Morning, this is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. 08459 455 555 is the phone number. We're talking cousins marrying. Listen, I know it's a long shot. If you married your cousin, could you give me a call and let me know? Surely it's wrong, isn't it? I know it's legal, but every part of my body is screaming it's ethically and morally wrong. 08459 455 555. And also, I will be telling you why everybody I work with, I don't like them. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. Now, hospital staff in Hertfordshire have been targeted by criminals who've conned them into handing over their bank details. Thieves have been stealing their wallets, then phoning their victims, pretending to be from the banks. Well, this week, a man has been jailed for withdrawing nearly £4,000 from the account of a worker at the Lister Hospital in Stevenage. I'm joined now by Susan, not her real name, who works at a hospital in the Three Counties. And you were victim of a similar scam, weren't you?
I was.
What happened? How did it work?
Basically, the first I knew about it, I got a phone call through to the desk where I work. Someone posing as my bank, telling me that my account was trying to be used in the Oxfordshire area, and someone was trying to withdraw £2,000, and that was the first I knew about it.
And did it all sound right? Did they sound? Did you kind of think, oh, this is my bank on the phone? Yeah, okay.
No, I didn't, because I wasn't aware. The first alarm bells that rung were that I wasn't aware that work had, or the bank had, my work details.
Right.
I thought they only had my home number and my mobile number, so that was the first thing that rang alarm bells. The second thing was I'd only just been to lunch about half an hour previous, and I had my purse with all my cards in it. So no, it did ring alarm bells.
What did they want you to do?
They said to be able to stop the transaction from going through, they would need my PIN number and the 3-digit security code off the back of the card. Otherwise, I would be liable for the transaction going through.
Okay. And did you give that to them?
No.
Oh, good. I was going to say, you look very sensible.
Yes.
And so what did you say? Did you say, come on, jog on, fellas, this is a scam?
Another thing that alarmed me was they said that where the area that the card was being used was at least an hour and a half's journey from where I actually work. And I knew, having only just been to lunch just previously, that there's absolutely no way that they could have got from, my work to this area within that period of time.
So what did you say to them when your suspicions are aroused quite early on? What did you say to the? I'm assuming it was a bloke on the phone.
Yes.
What did you say to the gentleman?
Very professional. Yeah. You wouldn't have, very professional person. Sounded like he could be from the bank. Did say all the right things, really. And I just said, if you can just hold the line, I just need to go in the office and just check that you've got the right person. I just need to go and check my purse and that whether I've got my cards.
Yeah.
And I did that. Obviously realised that my handbag was still there, but my purse had gone missing out of my handbag. So your purse had gone missing? Yes, it had at that point. So I then came back to the phone, and I did actually say to the guy, I believe this to be a scam, right? And that I would ring my own bank and deal with my own bank. And he said, we are your bank. I can give you a number if you would like to call me back, just to confirm that we are who we say we are. So I went along with him, took the number, put the phone down, and then actually rang the central line for my own bank. I didn't ring the number he gave me. And you got through to your actual bank, and they said, this is a scam? Absolutely. They said no one had tried to use my account, obviously, because they didn't get any information from me. So my account was left intact, thank goodness. Yeah. And at that point, they did say there was a lot of, this is quite common, and these people are doing these. But so someone had come into where you work and taken your purse out of your bag? Yes. As part of in a private office. How did they do that? I don't know. I mean, there's always people come in and go in, and they're obviously very, very. These people are very good at what they do. They're professional criminals. Have you spoken to any of your colleagues? Has this happened to anyone that you work with? No. So you were the unlucky one. I believe in the time I've been there, that this is the first and hopefully the last incident that's happened.
Did you speak to the police about this?
I did.
And what did they say?
They're very good. Came to work within a couple of hours of me notifying them. Took a statement, and really have been great. They've followed it through every step of the way. They did believe at the time that it wasn't anyone from work. It wasn't a one-off incident. They felt it was a wider picture,
right,
and it was happening a lot of different public places within the area.
So we've had we had a similar story a couple of weeks ago about a lady who had a phone call from her bank saying, "Oh, your card's being used now. We need your PIN details and your bank." And they sent someone round in a car to collect all of her bank statements, and she gave them to them. And my mother-in-law had a very similar thing a couple of weeks ago. But this actually stealing the purse,
yes,
it seems to be the new twist in this.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously, I had all they, luckily in hindsight, when I hear other people's stories, all they actually gained from me, I had £65 in cash in the purse, but I had all my other cards in there. Most people would carry their driving licences in there. So, I mean, it does leave you out of pocket, obviously, but equally, when I read the other stories and I hear the other stories, I do consider myself to be lucky, and I can see how, if someone was caught off guard, how it can happen.
What would you? Are you a little bit more vigilant at work now about where you leave your purse and things?
I don't take my purse into work now. No, I literally carry on my person what I need.
See, that's sad.
It is really sad,
isn't it?
It is really sad. Yeah, absolutely.
Listen, I bet we get loads of phone calls this morning from people who are saying they've had a similar thing. What would your advice be to anyone who gets a phone call like this purporting to be from their bank?
Just don't give any details whatsoever. I mean, you read on the internet, you constantly hear in the press that any bank would not ask you for any of your security details or personal details if they've rung you, and just say to the person on the phone, I'm going to hang up the phone now, and I'll deal directly through my bank or through my branch, and just do that straight away.
Susan, thank you very much for coming in
Pleasure.
And speaking out about this. Well, I think hopefully this. Listen, we did mention something similar a few weeks ago. If you've had this, my mother-in-law has had it since we last mentioned it. Could you give me a call? 08459 455 555. These scammers, they're getting clever. A couple of years ago, it was just the old internet. I'm Prince Wasubu. I've got $20 million. Give us your bank account.
Yes.
And we all got wise to that. They're getting cleverer and cleverer, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Very naughty. 08459 455 555. Right, let's get the travel news now. Here's Adam Glynn.
Beds, Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thanks very much, Iain. Good morning. The A1M. We had the accident earlier this morning on the northbound side, and they had the rolling road block in briefly, but it's all clear now and no delays left on that northbound carriageway. From Welwyn Garden City through to Stevenage is looking much improved. If you're driving through Welwyn Garden City, though, the A1000 Bessemer Road does have some roadworks near to Digswell Park Road. They should have them finished later through today. In Amersham, London Road West, still some temporary traffic lights for works at Station Road, the A416, and the M25 roadworks at the minute not causing any delays. I'm looking at the cameras and traffic seems to be going fine both ways between junction 23 at the A1M and 25 at the A10. Meanwhile, public transport looks to be quite good as well, with no delays reported on the departure boards. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Getting beds, hearts and bugs talking.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Good morning, it's 6:30 with the headlines. I'm Catherine Boyle. New figures suggest 20% of infant deaths in Luton are due to genetic conditions linked to marriage between cousins. A jury at Luton Crown Court has been told violent gang rivalry led to the death of a teenager who was deliberately knocked off his bike. And the Coronation Street actor Bill Roache is expected to make a statement this morning after prosecutors said he'd be charged with 2 counts of raping a 15-year-old girl in the 1960s.
Beds, Herts and Bucks Sport.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Stadium MK will find out later this morning if it's a venue for the 2015 Rugby World Cup. 13 from 19 venues of the shortlist will be hosting games during the tournament, and Milton Keynes' main rivals for a place are Coventry and Leicester. In football, Bayern Munich will play Borussia Dortmund in the first ever All-German Champions League final later this month after they beat Barcelona 3-0 at the Nou Camp in their semi-final second leg to record a 7-0 aggregate victory. And Chelsea will look to book a place in the the Europa League final tonight. They take a 2-1 lead into the second leg of their semi-final against Swiss side Basel at Stamford Bridge. And despite the advantage, the Chelsea interim manager Rafa Benitez isn't taking anything for granted.
My concern is that we will be thinking that we are in the final. It's not the case. We'll play against a very good team, a team that has scored goals away. So everybody has to realise that will be tough, will be difficult, and hopefully I will be wrong and we can do a great game and score a lot of goals. But first of all, we have to win.
The defending world snooker champion Ronnie O'Sullivan says he won't be returning to the Crucible even if he wins a 5th title. Speaking after his 13-4 quarter-final win over Stuart Bingham, O'Sullivan revealed he's not enjoying his return to the sport and that he only ended his exile from the sport to fund his children's private education. He says it's time for him to move on.
I think it's about time I look for something else, but you never know, I might plan a few PTC events. And you never know with the way the game's changing all the time. Barry Hearn's always changing formats, seedings, this and that. So it might suit me to plan the odd little event. But as far as putting my life into it, it's not going to work for me.
And that's your latest news and sport. More from me at 7 o'clock.
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Picture. There's a picture of a dog. Morning, this is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. 08459 455 555 is the phone number. Lots to talk about this morning. Feisty. Is enough being done to get illegal guns off the streets? It follows, hey, guess what? Another shooting in Luton this week. Every week. The 12th gun-related crime in the town this year. Well, I'll be speaking to a man who was a UN peacekeeper in Bosnia and Central America for 12 years. And what annoys you most about the people you work with? New research claims to have identified the ultimate nightmare colleague. And trust me, it could be some of the people that I work with here. We're talking as well about cousins marrying. Cousins marrying cousins, because a significant proportion of infant deaths in Luton can be linked to the fact that these children come from cousins marrying cousins. Well, Kathy has texted in, 81333, start your text 3CR. I married a Pakistani man whose brothers were severely mentally disabled because of this type of close relation marriage. Their lives are ruined. They mess themselves and one of them used to beat himself black and blue. Their mother has a terrible life. I say no to cousins marrying. People have to think of the children. Impartiality out the window. It's wrong, isn't it? I know it's legal, but it's morally and ethically wrong for cousins to marry cousins, particularly if it puts the children at risk. 08459 455 555. There can't be any defence for it, can there?
Lady, I'm your knight in shining armor, and I love you. You have made me what I am, and I am yours. My love, there's so many ways I want to say I love you. Let me hold you in my arms forevermore. You have gone and made me such a fool. I'm so lost in your love, and oh, we belong together. Won't you believe in my song? Lady, for so many years I thought I'd never find you. You have come into my life and made me whole. Forever, let me wake to see you each and every morning. Let me hear you whisper softly in my ear. In my eyes, I see no one else but you. There's no other love like our love. And yes, oh yes, I'll always want you near me. I've waited for you for so long. I want you to be, 'cause my love, there's something I want you to know. You're the love of my life. You're my lady.
Let's hope he's not referring to his cousin, because that would be illegal, but morally wrong. 08459 455 555. Is enough being done to get illegal guns off the streets? It follows another shooting in Luton this week, the 12th gun-related crime in the town this year. Well, our reporter, Justin Dealey, has been speaking to people in Luton about their concerns over gun crime in the town.
Well, it's frightening. It's frightening, especially when you've got grandchildren of teenage years and growing up, and it's just not nice, is it?
Well, I think it's, it's not acceptable. Nobody is allowed to, take guns in the street, and, it's a matter of people's life.
I think gun crime is a concern wherever it is, and in Luton, perhaps it's no better or worse than anywhere else. I'm more concerned with where they're getting the guns from.
Clearly, if people are being hurt, then it's a big concern, but does it concern most of the people in the town? Probably not.
Well, I'm joined now by Richard Blanchett, who lives near Milton Keynes. He was a UN peacekeeper in Bosnia and Central America for 12 years. Morning, Richard.
How you doing?
Yeah, fine, thank you. That lady there asked a question that I've been wondering. Where do people get the guns from?
Anytime that there's a black market for something, it doesn't matter what it is, profiteers will find a way. I mean, you think about it, guns are just pieces of metal. They can come in anything in a shipping container. They come in the walls of the shipping containers. They come sometimes inside other things. They come inside engines. They come inside all sort of things. But typically, mostly, they just come over in the boots of people's cars.
Really?
Yeah.
And whereabouts are they coming from? They're coming from the States? They're coming from Europe?
No, most of the ones you'll find over here are coming from mainland Europe.
Right.
There's. You have to remember, for 50 years we had a Cold War going on, and several governments profiteered off that Cold War. You had China, you had the Eastern Bloc countries. I mean, they cranked out guns in the Eastern Bloc like you wouldn't believe, and they shipped those all over the world. Sometimes they shipped them for free. They were shipping them to enemies of the U.S., and the U.S. was shipping the enemies of them. Guns from the U.S. and some were coming from here. So sometimes you'll find illegal guns on the streets, and they don't have serial numbers on them because they never needed them. I mean, you only have a serial number on it if you need to trace it for some reason, say ownership or registration. And so a lot of black market guns don't have any identifiable marks. They don't.
Listen, if I needed to go and score some drugs, I would know a few streets I could go to. I would know a few people who would know a few people who would know a few people, and I could get pretty much anything I wanted. But I wouldn't have a clue where to go and buy a gun from.
Same folks.
Sorry?
It's the same sort of...
The same process?
It's the same sort of... It's the same kind of people. You're looking at the same neighborhoods. You're looking at... It's anything... Here's a good example. When I first came over here, right, I came over here because I was offered a job over here. I came over and I had to wait for my visas and everything to come through. So I came over and they said, "Oh, we go ahead and give them the job to somebody who really needed it filled now." So I was kind of stuck. So I ended up working in pubs in London. When I was working in a pub in London, I saw gun transactions going on in the pub.
Really?
Yeah, on multiple occasions. It's not uncommon. It's not uncommon at all. And I'm thinking, well, this is just an East End pub. You know, this is just in one East End pub in London. This must be going on everywhere. And some years later, we were living in Nottingham, and somebody had stolen our identity. And the police said, "So whatever you do, don't go around to his house. We know he keeps arms, because as well as dealing in fake identities, he also deals in arms."
Wow.
So I mean, it's a lot more endemic than a lot of people like to think. But a lot of people think, well, you know, since they're illegal in this country, they bury their head in the sand, and figure that, oh well, the problem is just going to go away. It's not.
It isn't going to go away, is it? And I was going to say, I mean, we have pretty tight gun laws here anyway. Is there anything more we can do, or do we just have to accept it's part of the underground culture now?
There is a different tact to it. There's a different way to approach it. Basically, guns follow money, and money follows things that can make the black market money. There is money to be made in black market guns, and as long as there's a prohibition on them, then there will be a market for them. And that's just the way things are. I mean, the black market for firearms in places like Mexico was minuscule until 2002, when they passed a complete ban. And from 2002 onwards, now there's 475% the gun crime and 10 times the amount of illegal firearms on the street.
What kind of guns are they that are on the streets at the moment?
Anything. I mean, this is the funny thing that I find a little bit disturbing. There was a gunfight not but a couple of months ago in Milton Keynes.
Yeah.
Between some Somali gangsters, and one of them was using what was described, you know, to someone who's familiar with firearms as I am, as a military-style MP5, because it was fully automatic.
Yeah.
You know, and they were firing fully automatic rounds. The other was firing something that, from the description, appears to be an AK-47.
Wow.
So, I mean, we're talking about full-on paramilitary weapons. So there doesn't seem to be any restriction to what these people can get.
Richard, I have to ask you, we've got a caller who wants to speak to you in a second. I've got to ask you, being a UN peacekeeper in Bosnia and Central America, what was that like, man?
Dangerous.
Yeah, I bet. You're lucky to be here.
The funny thing is a lot of times, you know, you show up and the locals aren't sure to trust you. When they finally figure out that you're not there to do anything to them, they seem pretty forthcoming. But the problem with it is the situation was always fluid.
Yeah.
And one day the people that you were protecting may be the same day in that group that may be harboring somebody who's a member of your enemy, and that, you know, they're feeding back information on your troop movements, your numbers, and stuff like that. And somebody who you've checked their paperwork and you think that they're all right, is lined up in front of you with a group of 200 or 300 other people who are angry and armed.
Richard, listen, we haven't got time to talk. One day, can you come in and talk to us about being a UN peacekeeper? Would that be okay?
Yeah, sure.
It's fascinating. But very quickly, Steve from Luton wants a word. Steve, what's your take on gun crime?
Well, we should. The police should do more to put roadblocks in and check vehicles and check people.
What, everybody?
Well, as and when, at least if you know. It's the factor of, like, if the police are going to be there, these guns ain't going to move around so much, are they?
Well, let's put that.
Going to hinder it.
We're running out of time, Richard. The stop and search police roadblocks, would that have any effect?
I mean, it has some, but I mean, obviously, you got to look at places like Afghanistan and Iraq, where those sorts of operations take place, and it still happens. The simple fact of the matter is, do you want to live in a fascist police state where you have to have papers to move from town to town and have to undergo several inspections just to get to and from the shops or to and from work?
Steve, do you want to live in a fascist police town?
Well, listen, mate, it's better than being shot or a ricocheted bullet. And also, these people that are dealing in arms or whatever they're doing, a majority of them are from different cultures. These are people that are not mostly British. These are people that's the way they live wherever they've come from.
Richard, very quickly, you've got 30 seconds. Any truth in that? It's people from other cultures and other countries that are predominantly indulging in this.
Well, the gun trades I saw going on in a pub in London, I mean, those were just local British folks.
Yeah.
Yes, to some extent, some of it is true. I mean, like I said, with the gang fights were happening in Milton Keynes, those were between Somali gangsters. In Nottingham, where there were shootings near my house, it was Armenians versus. All I can tell you is people speaking Urdu.
Yeah.
But they're the end users, and they still are. They still make you're still probably more likely to be struck by lightning than by a bullet.
Richard, we're going to end it there on that vaguely positive note. We'll definitely get you in one day, Richard, to talk about UN peacekeeping in Bosnia. Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Right. And thank you, Steve, as well. 6:46, travel news now. Adam Glynn.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
At present, if you're heading for the car, things are looking decent, and if you're already in the car, you shouldn't have too many problems. A1M's looking clear after the problems of earlier. The M1 is running nicely, and there are no M25 delays as yet, even through the roadworks. The only route I can see at the minute that's being flagged up on the speed sensors as a bit slow is the A1 as you go past Boreham Wood and in toward London. It's looking a little bit slow going past Edgware right now. That aside, you've got no other issues on the roads. Roadworks could still delay you though, certainly if you're driving through Buckingham. They've got some works on the A413 London Road near to the Total Roundabout. Lights up on the A421 in that area as well. And on the trains, at the minute, everything's running to time. We've got no delays across the three counties. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you, Adam. Right, 6:47 exactly. It's Thursday, the 2nd of May. I'm Iain Lee, and these are your headlines on BBC Three Counties Radio. New figures suggest 20% of infant deaths in Luton are due to genetic conditions linked to marriage between cousins. A 41-year-old man has been jailed for 3.5 years for his involvement in a series of thefts from hospitals, including the Lister in Stevenage. In sport, Stadium NK will find out later this morning if it's a venue for the 2015 Rugby World Cup. And before 7 o'clock, new research claims to have identified the ultimate nightmare colleague. Justin Dealey has been out on the streets finding out what annoys you most about the people you work with. I need a word with Dealey, to be honest. Here's the weather with Elizabeth.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks weather.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Hello, a very good morning to you. Another beautiful day today. Lots of spring sunshine around. It is a bit of a chilly start, though. We're kicking off the day in around 4 or 5 degrees across most of the three counties, although some of our stations are actually showing just freezing 1 degree as well. So depending on where you are, really, that 1 degree is just outside of Milton Keynes, but it's good 4 degrees in just outside Welwyn Garden City. So touch milder here, but the temperatures will rise nicely in the sunshine. There'll certainly be plenty of that once more. Bit of fair weather cloud into the afternoon. Temperatures today between 15 and possibly 16 degrees Celsius. That's 61 in Fahrenheit. We may even see a touch higher than that, and that would be nice, wouldn't it? So no rain in the forecast, I'm afraid, for today or for tonight either. It's going to stay dry, clear skies, a lovely end to the day, I suspect, and then temperatures dropping overnight down to locally as low as 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. So again, possibly a touch of frost into tomorrow morning, always possible. And then tomorrow, fine and dry for most of the day, clouding over as we head into the afternoon. The southwesterly breeze picking up as well. This is a front coming through, so don't be too alarmed if you wake up on Saturday morning and think, oh, it's going to be a dreadful bank holiday, because it's cloudy and there are some outbreaks of rain. It will cheer up as we head into the afternoon, and some uncertainty regarding the forecast at the moment, but it does look like Sunday and Monday will be fine and dry with lots of sunshine around. There's the forecast.
Thank you.
Weeknights from 7. Mark Forrest.
Good evening, Joe.
Good evening.
Let's talk to Lynn. What's your story? Is there life after the armed forces?
They've got fantastic skill set.
City Street is great.
Fruit, veg. You're telling me the best thing about your local market.
It's inexpensive, but quality products that's grown locally.
How has adoption affected your family?
He always says to me, she is my birth mother, but you're my mum.
Mark Forrest. Weeknights from 7 on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Right from the start, you were a thief, you stole my heart, and I, your willing victim. I let you see the parts of me that weren't all that pretty, and with every touch you fixed them. Now you've been talking in your sleep, oh, things you never say to me.
been told that Jonathan Vernon-Smith is back today, which is great news for everyone. But well done to Tim for filling in from the last few days. Cracking. I listened to a bit of Tim yesterday, even though I was off ill. Excellent stuff. Now, everyone here in the office this morning has annoyed me. Everyone. All of my colleagues, my friends, have annoyed me. A lot. Well, what annoys you about the people at your work? The most irritating part of my job is Justin Dealey. Morning, Justin.
Yes, good morning, Ian. Yeah, talking about annoying people, quite a coincidence. It's talking to you, isn't it?
Yeah. Do you know what you've done this morning to annoy me?
Oh, what have I done? Look better than you, maybe?
Well, listen, I'm wearing clothes, so I'm instantly winning. You don't know, do you?
No, go on.
No, I'm not going to tell you.
Come on, tell me. Come on.
I will tell you in the next hour, but all of you have failed to do one thing today. One simple thing.
Would it be make you a drink?
Kelly Betts made me a drink, and she still let me down.
Would it be to give you a bit of an ego massage? Ian, you're so great. We missed you so much yesterday. You are wonderful. Would that be it?
You've been out in Luton this morning, Justin. What have you been up to, mate?
Well, new research out today from the Institute of Leadership and Management. They claim to have found the ultimate nightmare colleague. Now, this is the colleague who turns up late for meetings.
Hang on a second. I suspect this is going to be the Justin Dealey profile. Go on, point one, yes, check.
They leave dirty bowls and plates on the desk after lunch.
That's you, yes.
And they send you emails, even though you sit directly opposite them. Ian, I think they have been stalking you. They have been following you.
They're describing you, Dealey, you know it. But we have a meeting every morning at hang on, what time is that meeting these days?
10:30, I think.
10:30. Dealey strolls in about 10:40. Yeah. All right, girls, what have I missed? Carry on. I've got a great story for you. Carry on.
Well, mind you, that's better than saying, "Oh, I've got a headache. It's 5 o'clock. I can't come into work today, guys. I've got a headache." But I'll sit and listen to Tim as well.
You've been speaking to people in Luton.
Yes, I have. I've been in Luton. I've been asking people what annoys them about their work colleagues, and Ian, this is what they had to say.
Now, what really gets your goat is your work colleagues leaving quite literally everything, and somebody else having to clear it up. What exactly are they leaving then?
Food, newspapers, everything.
But how frustrating is that for you, having to work with these people, these animals?
They're annoying. I don't know if they do it at home, but it's just disgraceful. Oh, because I wouldn't do it.
And what about yourself, sir? What really annoys you about your work colleagues?
They don't make enough tea. I'm always making the tea. I'm supposed to be in charge. It's ridiculous.
How does that work then? So if you're in charge and you're making the tea, you've got to sort that situation out, haven't you?
Well, it's delegation, isn't it? You always delegate up the chain, not down the chain.
I mean, anything else apart from tea and too much tea making?
No, to be fair, I work with a good bunch of people, so...
Well, Bill, we're looking at your work colleagues through this window. What really annoys you about your work colleagues? What are their worst habits?
You can't get out of bed in the morning.
What, the lot of them?
This one.
And what's his name?
Mud.
Mud, apparently you can't get out of bed in the morning, is this true?
Yes, very true.
Yeah, OK. So what can Mud do? Can he maybe go and get a new alarm clock or something?
Sounds like a plan to me.
OK, sir, what really gets you about your work colleagues? What really annoys you?
People not pulling their own weight at work.
And have you ever said, "Oi, what do you think you're doing?"
Once or twice.
Yeah. And then what's happened?
Normally it's picked up for a little bit, but they generally go back to their own ways.
Your colleagues sound very much like mine and Ian Lee. Thank you very much indeed. So we've heard from lots of men. Let's now hear from a lady. Madam, what's the things that really annoy you about your work colleagues, their bad habits?
Sniffing.
Sniffing, OK, that's one.
Eating smelly food at the desk.
Yes.
Chewing loudly. Feet on tables.
How do you go to work every day? It just must be a constant annoyance for you.
It is. Yeah. It's a struggle.
Did that woman say stiffing?
Sniffing.
I apologise.
Yeah, so not enough tea making, sniffing, people turning up late for work, leaving newspapers, smelly food, you name it. We've found it this morning in 20 minutes or so. People get very, very annoyed about their work.
Why was that poor young lad called Mud?
I have got no idea. To be quite honest with you, I didn't want to ask.
OK, so I'm going to tell you what you and my colleagues did or did not do this morning to annoy me. And you're normally the best at this, Justin. This is why I'm doubly disappointed in you, Dealey. Double Dealey. Normally, I was expecting you to walk in this morning and say, "All right, Lee, nice nut cut." Yes, I've had what Justin Dealey calls a nut cut, what other sensible people call a haircut.
Oh, well, I didn't really notice, to be honest with you. Sorry about that.
You didn't notice? It's been long and shaggy for months, and now it's nice and trim.
Well, I found you quite attractive this week, but I'll check you out later on, if it makes you feel better.
Justin Dealey will speak to you later on. Producer Laura, you're pulling a face.
Well...
Look at this.
I just cocked my head slightly to look at your hair to establish whether or not I could see if there was a difference, and I cannot.
I haven't had it cut for 2 months. I've had quite a tight nut cut. And you can't... I'm saying it now. I've had a haircut and you can't notice it.
My only thought was, actually, that you're looking a bit more grey.
Oh, for goodness sakes. This is really not... And you're looking really pregnant. That's not an insult. Oh, damn. 08459 455 555 is the phone number. What annoys you about the people you work with? There must be something that just gets on your nerves. And it's the small things, isn't it, that drive us mad. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, producer Laura. And thank you in advance to Adam Glynn.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
We're looking all right at the minute out there on the roads. The M25 anti-clockwise is pretty slow, though, from the M1 to the A41 at Kings Langley, and then again from Maple Cross to the M40, so traffic's definitely building. Speed sensors picking up that it's starting to slow down, and looking at the cameras around there as well, you can see the hint of a queue starting to form, but it is all at least on the move at the minute. A similar story for the A1 as you head in toward London, southbound along the Barnet bypass. In Borehamwood, it's looking busy between Stirling Corner and Apex Corner at the A41. Main Road North in Dagnall, that's still got a lane closed for roadworks. It's the A4146, and they're doing the roadworks near to Ringshaw Road. And if you're using the A5 as part of your journey this morning, it's running okay for the minute, but we have got the works in Fenny Stratford at the Little Chef roundabout. Ongoing works so that they can add traffic lights to the roundabout there. Trains, they're looking good, no delays on the departure boards and no issues on the tubes if you're heading for London. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you, Adam. Coming up in the next hour, a fifth of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. Is it ever right for a cousin to marry a cousin? We'll find out more after the news with Catherine Boyle.
Getting beds, hearts and bucks talking.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. The headlines: infant mortality concerns in Luton, police hunt Letchworth paedophile, and decision day for Stadium MK.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
New figures suggest 20% of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. Borough Council researchers also found the numbers of local children who die before their first birthday in Luton are significantly higher than the national average. They're meeting to discuss the way forward tonight. Jerry Taylor is Luton Borough's Director of Public Health. She told Iain Lee how they're tackling the situation at the moment.
Making sure that people know what the health risks are and can act upon them accordingly in making their decisions. There is a screening and genetic counselling service that people can access through their GP, and we're working with that service to make sure that they have some tailored information for the people of Luton.
A jury at Luton Crown Court has been told violent gang rivalry led to the death of a teenager who was deliberately knocked off his bike. 22-year-old Kyle Beckford denies the murder of Delaney Brown in September last year. Police are hunting a paedophile from Letchworth who's gone on the run from jail. Michael McCartney failed to turn up for sentencing last week. Lee Agnew has the details.
77-year-old McCartney from Solershot Hall in Letchworth was found guilty of child sex offences dating between 1989 and 2006. Last Friday, he was jailed for 8 years in his absence at Cambridge Crown Court. Police say that it's possible he's fled the country to Cyprus and is warning that anyone who helps him may face prosecution themselves.
A financial watchdog is warning that many people with interest-only mortgages may be unable to repay them. The Financial Conduct Authority says that more than 1 million people aren't setting aside enough money and will be left with shortfalls averaging £70,000. Nick Hill from the Money Advice Service says people who buy a house need to plan for the long term.
Once you've got the keys, you start to relax with your finances because you've managed to make this massive, really important decision in your life. But it doesn't stop there. It relies on yourself to make sure you've got an investment approach, a plan in place to make sure you can pay off your mortgage at the end of the term.
Voting is taking place today in the latest elections for Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire County Councils. Polling stations are open until 10 o'clock tonight. Management speak has been highlighted as one of the top irritations for office workers. The Institute of Leadership and Management found that at the end of the day, you guys are fed up with touching base and targeting low-hanging fruit. So let's run up the flagpole and see who salutes, shall we? The Sports Stadium MK will find out later this morning if it's a venue for the 2015 Rugby World Cup. 13 grounds will be chosen from a shortlist of 19. Milton Keynes' main rivals for a place are Coventry and Leicester. The weather dry and bright with a top temperature of 15 degrees Celsius, that's 59 Fahrenheit. There's more news and sport online at bbc.co.uk/3 counties. BBC Three Counties Radio, first for news. Lovely hair, too late.
Really, Catherine, when you do something to that mop on your head, I'm one of the first people to say, oh, that looks good, even when it doesn't.
Mop? You mean long, lustrous locks?
Yeah. I expected a little, just a little wink or a little, just something, Catherine. I've got nothing. Nothing.
You expect that every morning.
No, that's true, actually, yeah. Morning, this is Iain Lee, BBC Three Counties Radio. Nice to be back. Thank you to Justin Dealey for filling in for me yesterday. He's a good lad. He does good stuff. The thing is, I think he fills in this show too well for me. Can we not get someone who's a little bit substandard to fill in for me? This is always the danger. When the presenter is off, they want someone who's not very good. And I think both myself and Jonathan Vernon-Smith should be slightly worried. He had Tim filling in for him, who was excellent. And I had JD filling in, who was, you know, very good, shall we say. Can we just get someone a little bit ropey in next time, please? No names, but I've got a few ideas. Right, lots coming up between now and 8 o'clock, and as always, I would love you to have your say on some of these stories. I'll give you the contact details in a second. Some of the things we're talking about include a fifth of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. The Borough Council says they want to do something about it. But we'll be hearing from the chair of the Luton Council of Faiths about why he married his cousin. Do you think cousins should be allowed to marry and have children together? 08459 455 555. Criminals are conning hospital staff in Hertfordshire into handing over their bank details. They're going into hospitals to steal people's purses and then use them on a bigger scam. Has a similar thing happened to you? And more than 1 million people with interest-only mortgages may be unable to repay them. The last times I've bought... Well, every time I've bought a house, I've been offered an interest-only mortgage. I cannot understand why anybody would take one. It just doesn't make any financial sense. Have you got an interest-only mortgage? Are you starting to worry about how you're going to pay for your house? Facebook.com/BBC3CR. You can send me a text, 81333. Start your text 3CR. Or you can give me a call, 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Shocking figures. 1/5 of the infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. The statistic published by Luton Borough Council also shows the number of children who die in infancy in Luton is 60% higher than the national average. Well, this evening the council is holding a public meeting to discuss the issue. Zafar Khan from the Luton Council of Faiths has been married to his first cousin for 36 years. He spoke to our reporter, Justin Dealey.
We have 5 children, ranging from the age of 30, almost 35 to 21 next month.
And they're all healthy children?
Yes, indeed, yes.
I mean, there could be people saying that this is disgusting and this shouldn't be happening. Is this still happening as commonly now as what it did when you married your first cousin?
Well, I mean, I think it's not disgusting at all, because this is quite common. It's part of the traditions, and I think social customs evolve over centuries, and so perhaps whatever change takes place slowly. And
would you have felt guilty if your baby had suffered long-term damage because you'd had a baby with your cousin? Would you have felt guilty, or would you say, well, it's our culture, that's what we believe in, and these things happen?
A parent who has a child with some kind of deformity or disability is always very sad. If you as a parent, and many parents in society, not just in Muslim or Asian society, but in all societies have children with disability, and it must be heartbreaking to have a child with disability. So, I mean, I would look at it that way. If you have a disabled child, do you feel guilty? I don't think so.
But then again, if I have a baby with my fiancée, there's no risk associated with that compared to marrying my cousin.
Perhaps not.
Do you think things will now change? If more education, more information is out there about the harm that could be caused to your baby, do you think things will change now?
No, people are more conscious, because we are changing, society is changing, we are becoming more aware of medical science, and wherever people do have tests and so on, and wherever it's appropriate, people refrain from marrying in the close kin. But it will take time, I think.
Is it cruel then if a married couple who are cousins decide to have a child knowing that their child could die or be deformed? Is that cruel?
It's not a question of parents being cruel. It's a question of whether parents are aware of the risks. Any parents could be potentially having a child with deformity, not necessarily cousins. But of course, there are risks involved with marrying in a close kin group, and I think people are becoming more and more aware of that.
Okay, sorry to push you on this answer.
No.
It's a yes or no. Do you think if people have a baby together, if they're marrying their cousin and they have a baby together, that they know the risks, yet they continue to have that baby? Is that cruel, yes or no?
If they knew the risk, they should not. A marriage of people who would potentially have a child of that kind should not actually enter into marriage. If they know that there is a potential of having a child who would be born with some deformities or disabilities.
Well, that was Justin Dealey speaking to Zafar Khan. But if you marry your cousin and have a child with a cousin, then you do know there's an increased risk. Here are some figures. Between April 2009 and March 2011, genetic conditions linked to cousin marriages was a factor in 20 out of 98 infant deaths, a fifth. 20 kids died over that 2-year period because it was cousins having babies. This was just in Luton, by the way, all from British Pakistani families. Many of the affected families had one or more previous infant deaths from the same conditions. So some of them had a kid that had died because they were cousins. They then went and had another kid that then died because they were cousins. It isn't right. Listen, it was very popular around the world to marry your cousin. The Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, weren't they cousins, I think? I suspect they may have been. Big in the royalty, big in posh families, and look at those guys, huh? There's nothing odd going on there, is there? But it kind of died out in the Western world in the early 20th century. It's not right. Is it? Am I a lone voice here, as I was the other day? Am I going to get a load of abuse on Twitter and Facebook once again? I don't care, because I'm kind of believing in what I'm saying. It doesn't make sense. It's wrong, isn't it? I think it's morally and ethically wrong to marry your cousin. And then to have kids when you know there is an increased chance of genetic weaknesses. 08459 455 555. I'd like your views either way on this. If you think I'm barking up the wrong tree, do give me a call. If you've married your cousin, Pakistani or otherwise, would love to talk to you this morning. I know it's a long shot. I know it doesn't happen that much, but I would love to talk to you. 08459 455 555. We'll be talking about this more in this show later on. There'll also be more on this story with Chetan Patak on Sunday from 6 p.m. on BBC Three Counties.
Call 08459 455 555.
08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Yeah. There's been another gun crime in Luton. I know, 12 this year so far. It's just incredible, isn't it? I mean, every week, I am getting bored of it now. And every time it comes up, we have to do it on this show, and we're constantly scratching our heads going, well, what can we say that's different, apart from giving you the stats? What can we do? Is there anything that we can do as a society to get gun crime down, to reduce gun crime? Pat's in Houghton Regis. Morning, Pat.
Good morning.
Pat, what would you do?
Well, certainly the justice system needs a big shake-up, so we have a minimal sentencing on carrying knives and guns. You take those people straight off the streets and you just give them a custodian sentence to start with.
Wasn't there... didn't they introduce a custodial sentence for knife crime a couple of years ago, or did I just dream that? Did they say they were going to and then kind of wimp out on it?
Where you get words come out from government, then you get the police saying they're going to be tough on crime and they're not. They prefer to give warnings. I don't know if it's to do with the paperwork or whatever it is. Then we got the PCC crime commissioners. They've come in to do something about it, and you know it's going to be everything are the same that we've had in the past. It's having the police a force that's got the will to tackle crime, and unfortunately we have police in this country now. I'm not talking about the man on the beat, but the senior officers who tend to want to be cautious when when people are arrested. They'd rather give warnings rather than arrest them and bang them up, if you like.
But listen, gun crime in America is huge. Okay, I know it's slightly different because guns are legal, but gun shooting and gang shooting, things like that, are huge. Even in states where they have the death penalty, where they have tougher law, and it doesn't seem to make any difference to the statistics over there.
Well, you've got to look at it over here, haven't you? If you've got youngsters on the streets that are frightened that they may get stabbed or they may get shot, then they're going to start arming themselves. It's a lack of confidence in the police that probably causes that, and our justice system. And it may even spread out to people, ordinary people like me. If we're going out on the street and we're hearing this is happening weekly or daily, you know, you might think, well, I've got to defend myself as well. And then that starts escalating and everything goes out of the window then.
Pat, please tell me you're not going to carry a knife in your sock or buy a gun. Please.
I'll tell you now, I would never carry a knife, I'd never carry a gun, because there's always that chance that if someone did produce a knife or a gun at you and you did carry something like that, you would have to use it back. And that becomes really dangerous.
It does, Pat. Thank you. I'm glad we talked you down from that. Ledger's Chekhov says, if a gun appears in a book, it's going to get used. And if a gun appears in a fight, there's a good chance it's going to get used, isn't it? 08459 455 555. If we spoke to a gentleman earlier on, a UN peacekeeper who'd worked in Bosnia. We're going to get him back on the show and talk to him about that a bit at some point. Fascinating. But he's seen gun trades in pubs. I was saying, listen, I would know places in London and probably places in Luton and people who could get me drugs. I could go and get drugs now. Take a few phone calls. I could probably sort it out. Wouldn't have a clue where to get guns. But the gentleman, the former UN peacekeeper, said, well, he's seen gun trades happening in pubs quite openly. 08459 455 555. 7:15, Travel News, Adam Glynn.
Beds, Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
The M1 I'm looking at right now on the speed sensors, flagging up some delays, about maybe 10-15 minutes between the Luton Airport Spur at junction 10 and the A5 at Redbourne at junction 9. Average speeds have definitely dropped right down, so traffic's starting to build around there. M25 anti-clockwise, busier even than it was 15 minutes ago. Delays now start at the M1 and continue round to Watford at junction 19. Then after a little bit where it flows nicely, it gets slow again from Chorleywood at junction 18 through to the M40 at junction 16. Could take you about 15-20 minutes to get through that stretch of the motorway. Looking at the M40, it's running all right down toward London, no delays at the minute. The A1 is a bit slow though as you go through Boreham Wood and in toward London. Stirling Corner to Mill Hill Circus is where it's most busy, and on the speed sensors I can see a bit of a queue building on the A405 as you come from the Park Street roundabout down to the M25 at junction 21A. Trains are still looking good, no delays on those departure boards. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, thank you very much. Right, it's 7:16, it's Thursday, the 2nd of May. I'm Iain Lee and these are your headlines on BBC Three Counties Radio. New figures suggest that 20% of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. Police are hunting a paedophile from Letchworth who's gone on the run from jail. It's thought Michael McCartney may have fled the country. In sport, Ronnie O'Sullivan says he won't return to the Crucible even if he wins a 5th World Snooker title, as he's not enjoying his return to the sport. The weather today in Beds, Herts and Bucks, dry and bright with a top temperature of 15 degrees. Coming up, before 7:30, criminals are conning hospital staff in Hertfordshire into handing over their bank details. They're going into hospitals, stealing purses and using them as part of a bigger scam. Has something similar happened to you? We did report on something kind of linked to this a few weeks ago. Since then, it's happened to my mother-in-law. There are some very, very naughty people out there. 08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio. Nick Coffer, across Beds, Herts and Bucks.
I'll be in Kimpton on Friday as I continue to discover the towns and villages that you call home.
Nick Coffer.
There'll be a special performance from the local Amdram group. Find out how I get on joining the school orchestra. There's live music and a spot of wine tasting.
Across Beds, Herts and Bucks.
There's also a rumour I may be eating dog biscuits.
Nick Coffer.
Live from the Boot in Kimpton, Friday from midday.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
We've all eaten dog biscuits, haven't we? We've all come in late at night, a little bit worse for wear, couldn't get a kebab on the way home, there's nothing in the fridge, and... Oh, there's the dog biscuits, there's the cat sweets. I'll just have a few, just to stay... Oh, these aren't bad. I'll have a few. We've all done that, haven't we? Hospital staff in Hertfordshire have been targeted by criminals who've conned them into handing over their bank details. Thieves have been stealing their wallets, then phoning their victims, pretending to be from their banks. This week, a man has been jailed for withdrawing nearly £4,000 from the account of a worker at the Lister Hospital in Stevenage. It was revealed he'd committed 30 similar offences across the country over a 3-year period. Earlier on in the show, I spoke to Susan, not her real name, who works at a hospital in the Three Counties and was a victim of a similar scam.
The first I knew about it, I got a phone call through to the desk where I work, someone posing as my bank telling me that my account was trying to be used in the Oxfordshire area and someone was trying to withdraw £2,000. And that was the first I knew about it.
And did it all sound right? Did they sound... Did you kind of think, oh, this is my bank on the phone? Yeah, OK.
No, I didn't, because I wasn't aware... The first alarm bells that rung were that I wasn't aware that work had, or the bank had my work details.
Right.
I thought they only had my home number and my... mobile number, so that was the first thing that rang alarm bells. The second thing was I'd only just been to lunch about half an hour previous and I had my purse with all my cards in it, so no, it did ring alarm bells.
Well, that was earlier on in the show. Chris MacDonald is an area security management specialist at NHS Protect. They tackle crime across the health service. Morning, Chris.
Yeah, good morning.
Chris, can you explain what they do, these scammers?
Yeah, of course, and I've got to sort of emphasise. I listened to your caller earlier in the programme, and it has to be said that they are so convincing on the phone.
Yeah.
What they do typically, they'll come into a hospital or a clinic, surgery, and they'll what we call tailgate. They'll get to an access control corridor, normally one that contains sort of offices. Wait for somebody to go through the access control doorway using their swipe card or password, and they'll follow them through the door once the door's open. Once in the corridor, they'll literally just look into offices until they find an empty one. They'll pop into that office, find a handbag or a jacket over the back of a chair, steal the purse or wallet, and then they're off. And they're just in there for seconds. They're smartly dressed. They look as if they fit in. Often they'll be wearing an NHS-style lanyard around their neck, an ID lanyard.
Oh, so they kind of dress up a bit and play the part?
Oh, very much so. Absolutely. They'll often have a mobile phone in their hand as well. So if, as they're walking down a corridor, somebody comes towards them, they'll put the mobile phone to their ear because, you know, even if you would normally challenge somebody and say, what are you doing here? If they're on the phone and talking to somebody, well, you're not going to interrupt them, are you?
I'm assuming this isn't particularly common. I mean, but how often is this happening?
Well, we had a spate where it was quite common, and we were looking. I say quite common. We were looking at maybe 3 or 4 incidents a week, but then we're looking nationwide, not just in the Three Counties area.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at hundreds and hundreds of hospitals, and it was happening 3, maybe 4 times a week. From the beginning of this year, from when Adrian Garrick, the chap we're talking about, was arrested and remanded in custody, the numbers plummeted. And we only had a handful in the first 3 months of this year. Unfortunately, in the last few weeks, we've seen a few more. But it certainly plummeted when Adrian was remanded.
And how did you... Obviously, they're stealing these things and they're making the phone calls. How many of the staff are actually giving the bank details that they're being asked for?
Well, that's the problem. And NHS Protect are obviously sort of looking at the figures. I would say probably about 50% of the time, unfortunately.
Really?
But you understand that, I mean, obviously, and it's important for your listeners to know that the bank will never, ever, ever, ever ask for that PIN number. And you must never, ever give it out, however convincing anybody is. But because they've taken the wallet or the purse, they've got access to your private information. So your driving licence probably in there, so they know your date of birth and your address, your postcode and so on. You've probably got receipts stuffed in there from the journey to Sainsbury's last night. So they'll tell you that the last thing you did on your credit card was spent £27.50 at Sainsbury's or Tesco's. And that will sort of kind of convince you, because you're already in panic mode. They've asked you if you've got your purse. You've suddenly looked in your handbag, you haven't got it. You're in a tailspin already, and they're very convincing.
This gentleman, Mr. Garrick, who's been arrested. I mean, how do the victims feel once they realise they've been scammed?
Well, of course, frightened, obviously, because they're going to lose money, but embarrassed as well, you have to say. I mean, your caller earlier, of course, whose name we didn't disclose, you feel a bit of a fool, I have to say, because you've given out your PIN. And we all know we don't give our PIN numbers out, and yet you do. So embarrassed, definitely.
I would imagine when something like this happens that there will be suspicion and people thinking, well, was it Steve in accounts? Was it Lisa who did? Were they reassured in any way to find out that it wasn't one of their colleagues that had done this?
Oh, look, most certainly. And of course, in the majority of cases, and this is where these people, I don't know, once they're clever in doing the scam, they're not clever in hiding themselves, because in all of our hospitals these days we've got CCTV, so we'll find them, and we'll find the CCTV of them, not necessarily stealing the purse, but, and this is where they are quite clever in a way, I suppose, because they'll maybe do an offence in Derby today, and then a couple of days later they'll be in Canterbury and Kent. And because it's separate police forces, the police don't necessarily join the dots. And that's where NHS Protect comes in, because, we coordinate all of these incidents and make sure that the different police forces are aware that this is a national crime. And I have to say, the relationship that's been built up between NHS Protect and Hertfordshire Constabulary is fantastic. And the detective that led on this inquiry with Garrick, Emma Landucci, was superb. And in fact, quite rightly, at the end of the trial of Garrick, the judge awarded her accommodation for her detective ability.
Chris, I'm so naive. Right? I went to visit my cousin in hospital about a month ago now, and he was in an isolated room, so I had to leave my bag and my coat outside and put a robe on and mask and stuff like that. And I left my bag in the hallway, and a nurse came along and said, "Oh no, don't leave it there." I said, "Why not?" She said, "Well, someone might nick it." And I'm so naive to think that when you're in a hospital, everyone's loving and everyone wants the best for everyone, but it's not the case. I know that it was staff that were targeted in these specific events. Should patients and visitors be worried?
Oh, worried not. I mean, even like I say, when we've got 3 or 4 incidents a week, that's 3 or 4 incidents over hundreds and hundreds of hospitals. So the chances of it happening are really quite small. There's certainly no need in our hospitals to be frightened. The staff are aware that these things happen. If you've got any concerns at all you've got to do is go to a member of staff and mention it. It's a difficult balance, isn't it? Because the NHS is very much a sort of an open and welcoming place. But at the same time, there are people that do prey on the fact that we are so sort of opening and welcoming. So it is important to just be aware of your own security, and what I would sort of police your own space, if you like, and make sure that you don't leave yourself open to becoming a victim.
Chris, I really appreciate your time this morning. Chris McDonald, Area Security Management Specialist at NHS Protect. I'd love to hear your stories. I couldn't believe it when I was in the hospital. I'm so naive. And you do think it's a hospital. Everyone's going to be... It was a hospital on a really nasty ward as well, nasty in terms of what they were dealing with. And you think, everyone's going to be... concerned and secure. Everyone's going to be concerned and loving, and we want the best for everyone there. And the nurse said, "Oh, don't leave that there; it'll get nicked." I said, "Really? Yeah, don't. It'll get nicked." What, outside a room where there's a lad in there wired up to a machine who's just had a tracheotomy? Yeah, just be incredible. Is incredible. 08459 455 555 is the phone number if you want to give me a call and share your stories about that. Just time to tell you that, yes, he's back. From 9 o'clock, Jonathan Vernon-Smith will be here. He's starting off with the big phone-in, and then from 11, it's on to the consumer issues, including that of Lee. He bought a new battery for his mobility scooter, but it didn't seem to hold charge. Should it last more than a year? Yes. I would say it would. And can Jonathan help him with the shop he bought it from? I bet Jonathan can. I bet I've seen Jonathan Vernon-Smith on making those phone calls to companies that have let his listeners down. He's very good. Oh, he's very good. JVS show this morning from 9 o'clock on BBC Three Counties Radio. 08459 455 555. We're also talking this morning things that irritate you at work about your work colleagues. What really irritates you? I've been very annoyed this morning that hardly anybody, well, no one, in fact, spotted that I'd had a haircut. Margaret O'Dell says, it's people who sniff. I can't bear it. Get a tissue. Yeah, sniffers. Just do that all the time. So, yeah, just blow your nose, for goodness sakes. And Annie says, nothing annoys me about my colleagues. I work alone from home. Thank you very much, Annie. Glad you felt you could be part of the debate. Travel news now with Adam.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Iain, I just have one sort of important point to raise with regards to sniffers. Now, I would say I am one sometimes,
Yes.
but it's because I've suffered with hay fever since I was 3.
Right.
And if I used a tissue every time, I'd be going through sort of 8 boxes of tissues
No,
every
Adam.
half an hour.
You use... Look, let me get what I've got from my pocket here. You use a handkerchief. Look at this.
See, I do.
Well, then fine. Go
in each pocket.
Go to the loo and have a blow. No, hang on a second. Get on with the travel, please.
The M1 southbound, it's got a few delays already this morning. Luton Airport Spur through to Redbourne Junction 10 to 9. Anti-clockwise M25 is busy as well from the M1 to Watford, then from Chorleywood to the M40, taking a total of maybe half an hour already to get through there. Clockwise starting to look slow into the roadworks, and the A1, if that's your route of choice into London, is busy in Boreham Wood between Stirling Corner and Mill Hill Circus. The A10 now looking slow as well. Queues through Cheshunt, approaching the Winston Churchill Way, and again once you get beyond the M25, queues through Enfield between Bullsmore Lane and Southbury Road. No delays on the trains though. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you very much, Adam. 7:30, something news and sport now. Here's Catherine Boyle.
Getting beds, hearts and bugs talking.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Good morning, the headlines. New figures suggest 20% of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to marriage between cousins. Police are hunting a paedophile from Letchworth who's gone on the run from jail. It's thought 77-year-old Michael McCartney may have fled the country. And a financial watchdog is warning that many people with interest-only mortgages may be unable to repay them.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks Sport.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Organisers of the 2015 Rugby Union World Cup are planning to host as many as 5 games at London's Olympic Stadium. Stadium MK is in contention to make the final shortlist of 12 venues which will be released later this morning. But as the BBC's Rugby Union correspondent Iain Robertson reports, purpose-built rugby stadiums are in the minority.
From a long initial list of around 20 venues, it's expected that the final 12 will be named this morning. Only 4 rugby grounds are likely to be used in the 2015 World Cup: Twickenham, the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff, plus Kingsholm in Gloucester and Exeter. The RFU hope to announce that the Olympic Stadium will host up to 5 matches and Wembley will also be used. The most likely remaining 6 football grounds will be Newcastle United, Leeds United and Manchester City in the north, Aston Villa and Leicester City in the Midlands and Brighton in the south.
In football, Bayern Munich will play Borussia Dortmund in the first ever All-German Champions League final later this month after they beat Barcelona 3-0 at the Nou Camp in their semi-final second leg to record a 7-0 aggregate victory. Chelsea, meanwhile, will look to book their place in Europa League final tonight. They take a 2-1 lead into the second leg of their semi-final against Swiss side Basel at Stamford Bridge. The defending world snooker champion Ronnie O'Sullivan says he won't be returning to the Crucible even if he wins a 5th title. Speaking after his 13-4 quarter-final win over Stuart Bingham, O'Sullivan revealed he only ended his exile from the sport to fund his children's private education. He says it's time for him to move on.
I think it's about time I look for something else, but you never know, I might plan a few PTC events. And you never know with the way the game's changing all the time. Barry Hearn's always changing formats, seedings, this and that. So it might suit me to plan the odd little event. But as far as putting my life into it, it's not going to work for me.
And that's your latest news and sport. More from me at 8 o'clock.
See, you hate your job and coming in every day, but yet you have put your life into it, haven't you?
Yeah, I really have thrown my whole life into this job.
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
I think we saw behind the curtain there. Morning, this is Iain Lee. 08459 455 555. Is it ever acceptable for cousins to marry? We're talking about that. Also, is enough being done to get illegal guns off the streets? It follows another shooting in Luton this week, the 12th gun-related crime in the town this year. We'll be speaking to a firearms expert to find out what he thinks needs to be done. And more than 1 million people with interest-only mortgages may be unable to repay them. Were you advised to get an interest-only mortgage? Why did you do it? You're still going to pay all the money back. You're just paying the interest back. They were offered to me, and I kept scratching my head going, why is this a good idea? I can see no benefit in doing it. If you've got an interest-only mortgage, you're some kind of muppet. You really are. What was your reason for doing it? 08459 455 555. You can text 81333. Start your text 3CR. Put your name on, please. Or you can go to facebook.com/BBC 3CR. Now, is enough being done to get illegal guns off the streets? It follows another shooting in Luton this week, the 12th gun-related crime in the town this year. Well, our reporter, Justin Dealey, has spent the morning in Luton. Another gun story, Justin.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, Ian, the 12th one this year. People in Luton are very concerned. I've been asking people in the town this morning whether enough is being done to take these guns off the streets. Full of opinions this morning. This is what people had to say. So, Beverly, do you think enough has been done in Luton to take illegal guns off the streets here?
I think that's a hard question to answer, because in the past there was a lot more police on the street, and I think gun crime was not so predominant then. But since I've had cuts and there's not so many people on the beat, the opportunity is there more so for youth to go and get guns and commit such unnecessary crimes.
It's very, very frustrating, isn't it?
Yeah,
because we seem to be forever talking about another shooting in Luton. Just how concerned are you living here in the town?
I'm very concerned because Luton is a nice town. I'm concerned because it's happening during the day, not just during the night. I'm concerned because I have a daughter myself, and even though she's doing quite well at university, you just need to be in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Somebody with me now who's a teenager. Do you think enough is being done to take illegal guns off the street here in your town?
No, not really. It's mainly because now there's less police on the street. You've got more of the gangs going out, thinking they can do stuff and then get away with it. And it's just not enough, so there needs to be more police on the street, more warnings in place, just things like that.
It's exactly what the previous lady said to me, that there's not enough police out there. You've had the chance to join these gangs, but you haven't got into them. Can you tell us why?
Well, it's just because I know the consequences. I know that people are going to get hurt. I just don't like doing that kind of stuff, and at the end of the day, I don't want to mess my life up to go and join a gang. It's just not worth it.
So you know for an absolute fact that there are people in Luton right now in these gangs who are carrying knives. You know that for a fact.
Yes, there definitely is people in Luton who are carrying knives and guns.
Have you seen the guns yourself?
I haven't seen the guns. I've seen people with knives, but I haven't seen people with guns.
So had you have joined one of these gangs then, would you have been given a gun?
Most probably, or a knife. And you would have been told what to do with it. Just everything like that you need to know.
OK, and a final point here. It's very honest what you're saying. A final point. Can this really be tackled now? Has it gone too far? Has the problem become too big in Luton?
I think it might have done. There's so many people now on the streets with guns and knives. It's just so silly. Because if they would have taken earlier measures, then maybe less knives and stuff would have been put on the street.
Well, Justin, lots of voices there and some fascinating stories.
Absolutely. I mean, it's all very well talking to people on the streets who may have no connection to gangs at all. They're very concerned, but it's when you speak to the teenagers, I think you find the real story there. I mean, that person was a teenager, 17 years old, had the opportunity to join one of these gangs where he knows that he would have been given a gun probably, if not certainly a knife. So that listening to that this morning was was very concerning for me. And again, it's the 12th gun-related crime this year alone in Luton. And certainly the feeling in the town is it is one of worry. Whether these peace rallies will make any difference whatsoever, we don't know. But of course, we can only hope so.
I like the idea of a peace rally. I think it's a nice thing to do. But surely the people who are causing the problems, they're not going to go to the peace rally. They're not going to listen, are they?
You wouldn't think so, but the policing, again, is a big issue with people here. They're saying not enough police out there keeping an eye on things. Other people have said to me, not enough is being done in the community to talk to these people first. I mean, that person we spoke to there, it was his decision not to join the gang. He's got his head screwed on. He wants to have a bright future, but of course, people can be easily led, and according to lots of people in the town, they're saying not enough is being done to speak to those people before they get the opportunity to go and join these gangs.
Justin Dealey, excellent stuff as always. Thank you very much indeed. Mike Yardley is a firearms expert and spokesman for the Shooting Sports Trust. Morning, Mike.
Morning, Ian.
Mike, is most of this gun crime caused by illegally held weapons?
99% of it, in fact, nearly all the gun crime in the UK is connected one way or another to the drugs trade. It's about the consequent turf wars between drug gangs. And if you were to do something about the drugs, you'd be doing something about the illegal guns. Remember, nearly all the guns involved in these crimes are not sort of guns that people would use, for example, to go clay pigeon shooting or something like that. They're guns which have been illegal in this country for quite a long time. I mean, handguns were banned after Thomas Hamilton's rampage in Dunblane. So these are all illegal guns, and they didn't come from the legal shooting community. That's a key point. But there were some very interesting things said in those interviews, because I think people are obviously very concerned about this. And it is about getting to young people, about talking to them. There are a lot of very interesting initiatives in the States as far as gangs are concerned. Those are worth exploring. We still have porous borders, unfortunately. We have illegal guns coming in with illegal drugs into this country. That is a major problem. But there is also, I think, a need for perspective. I do find it interesting with Luton that you're having so much of this sort of gun crime. I notice in Ireland, for example, you also get something similar happening in Limerick, of all places. So there are other precedents. But generally speaking, in the UK, we have very, very little firearms homicide or indeed gun crime. Quite a lot of knife crime. But overall, we've got about 40 firearms homicides a year, something like that, comparing to about 10,000 in the US. That's 40 times higher, even correcting for population. And even if you went over to Europe, if you went to Germany, you'd see that they had perhaps 4 times as much gun crime as we do. Guns here, legally owned ones, are very strictly controlled. The problem is in the illegal guns, but particularly it's the drugs trade. Do something about the drugs trade and you do something about the guns and the knife crime.
Thank you for bringing in context. You're right. And I never want to be one of those people that hey, there are guns everywhere. Everybody panic. Well, you know, the reason we're doing this again is just because this is the 12th incident this year in Luton, which does seem a lot. Any idea why somewhere like Luton, Mike, would have such a high figure?
Yeah, let me just say, and it's not blowing sweet nothings in your direction, I thought that was an excellent piece of journalism from your reporter, because it's really getting at what is going on. Why do we see these sort of things happening? I gave some evidence to Lord Cullen after the Dunblane tragedy. That concerned a mock killings, but it was my key idea was that I thought that the individual in society was becoming more alienated and frustrated than maybe the individual of 50 years ago. And that has its part to play in things like a mock killings, where somebody goes and shoots a lot of people, which is a worldwide phenomenon that we've seen in recent years. I think also as far as kids are concerned, if you look at the whole drug-related culture, these are alienated kids. They've got nowhere to go. The drug gang becomes a sort of alternative family to them. And if you go to the States, you do see that there's some really excellent initiatives that do get to the kids themselves.
Do those things work? I'm assuming you mean kind of what people going into schools and talking and things like that,
No,
or going up
way beyond.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of stuff are they doing?
Well, they're going. They have programs where they talk to gang members, where they try and actually have people who've been ex-gang members themselves trying to connect with these kids. And of course, you know, they're watching all the sort of video games, all that sort of stuff, games which maybe take away their moral sense, where you see people being shot and murdered on screen. That's part of the game you play. Very popular with young people. But as well as that, I think there is a real problem of a lost generation. these kids may feel they're not going to get jobs, they may feel that they've got all sorts of other personal problems, and that's at the beginning of this process. And what you need to do is to get people who possibly have been gang members themselves talking to these kids and getting them back on the straight and narrow. Now, that's very, very difficult. Meantime, I think there is a policing issue here, because a lot of members of the local community, bluntly, in some places, they're more frightened of the drug gangs than they are of the police. And that is a problem that has to be addressed too, and that is a challenging one for the police themselves.
You mentioned video games there, Mike. Do you really think that they corrode young people's morals and ethics? Surely people are clever enough, the majority of people are clever enough to differentiate between the fantasy of playing a game or watching a film and what happens in real life, or do you disagree?
Well, it's a very good question. I'm an experimental psychologist by my own academic training. And I've looked at all the academic papers on this, and there is, not everybody agrees. But the American Psychological Association did come out, excuse me, and say that they thought there was a causal link between visual violence and violent behaviour. I think it's common sense, frankly, that there probably is. I mean, we use advertising, and every major company uses advertising, presumably because it works. If you see something on screen, particularly if you interact with something where, for example, you're pulling a trigger and shooting somebody and you see blood coming down the screen, as you do in some of these games, yes, I do think that has an effect on young people. And I think a lot of them don't perhaps have the relationship with reality that you and I do, and therefore it's even more dangerous. Dustin Hoffman came out with some very interesting comments, talking about putting murder and torture on film and putting music to it and calling it entertainment, and saying he just thought that was morally wrong. And I agree with him. I think we've been far too soft on the entertainment media and also on the makers of these games, because I do think they have a significant impact. At the time of the Dunblane shootings, I looked at the top 10 rental videos. There was an average, I think, of 13 firearms killings per video. Yes, I do think that is part of the problem, but it's not the biggest one.
No.
The biggest one is the drugs trade. Do something about drugs, you do something about illegal guns and gun homicide.
Mike, I really appreciate your time. Fascinating stuff. Mike Yardley, firearms expert, spokesman for the Shooting Sports Trust. What would you do to stop gun crime? Interesting what he was saying about what's going on in America with gang members and ex-criminals speaking to younger people. What would you do to stop the gun crime? The 12th gun incident in Luton this year. It's, the 2nd of May. It's incredible, isn't it? 08459 455 555. 7:45. Travel news now. Adam Glynn.
Beds, Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you, Ian. Just looking at the speed sensors on the A5, southbound traffic starting to build in the Whipsnade area from Lynch Hill down toward the M1 at junction 9 is looking slow, but the M1 itself seems to have eased off a little bit, and it's certainly running a bit better than it was about half an hour ago. A41 from Hemel Hempstead down to the M25 is looking busy. We've still got a queue as well on the A405, the North Orbital Road, as you head from the Park Street roundabout down to the M25. Then M25 traffic, well, an average morning I would say. It's slow anti-clockwise from Kings Langley to the M4, taking maybe 40 minutes to get through the traffic at present. Clockwise looking busy into the roadworks section, starting around junction 23, the A1M. And the A1 is slow through Boreham Wood between Stirling Corner and Mill Hill Circus. Heading for the station right now, your journey should be a pretty decent one this morning. Whether you're heading north or down toward London, everything on the trains is running reasonably well. One cancellation on the departure boards if you're heading from Luton up toward Bedford. The 8:08 service that was coming up from Kent from Ashford has been cancelled because of a train fault, but apart from that, everything else looking good. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you very much, Adam. I'm sorry. My wife has just tweeted me and this radio station. We're saying what annoys you about people you work with, OK? Well, she's tweeted, what annoys people at home? Someone getting annoyed we've not noticed their haircuts. No names mentioned. Yeah, even my wife didn't notice. I was sat there with my son on my lap going, can you notice anything different about Dada? No. I'm pointing my eyes up to I'm pointing my eyes up to my head. He went, you've got bouncy eyes? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Right, 7:47. I'm Iain Lee. It's Thursday. Where are we? Yes, Thursday, the 2nd of May. These are your headlines on BBC Three Counties Radio. New figures suggest 20% of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to marriage between cousins. Police are hunting a paedophile from Letchworth who's gone on the run from jail. It's thought 77-year-old Michael McCartney may have fled the country. In sport, Stadium MK will find out later this morning if it's a venue for the 2015 Rugby World Cup. Coming up, a fifth of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. The Borough Council says they want to do something about it. Well, we'll be hearing from the chair of the Luton Council of Faiths about why he married his cousin. Do you think cousins should be allowed to have children together? It's weird, isn't it? 08459 455 555. Here's the weather with Elizabeth.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks weather.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
A very good morning to you. Well, it's not a bad looking day today either. We're going to see lots of spring sunshine around. Temperatures possibly slightly higher than they were yesterday, but it is a rather chilly start. There's a few mist patches out there as well, but temperatures are rising nicely. And we've got between 2 and 5 degrees actually across the three counties at the moment. And we'll see those temperatures rise to 15 or even 16 degrees in Tring and Luton, Stevenage and in Cheshunt as well. That's 61 in Fahrenheit. Lots of sunshine around, just a light breeze and a bit of fair weather cloud bubbling up here and there through the afternoon, but all in all it's going to be another lovely day. In some places we could even see a peak of the temperatures up to 17 or even 18 degrees, certainly closer to London we may well see that, so it is going to feel nice and warm in the sunshine. A fine end to the day, and then overnight tonight clear skies, light winds, temperatures dropping locally as low as 2 or 3 degrees Celsius, possibly a touch of frost in the suburbs into tomorrow morning as well. And then tomorrow fine and dry for the most part. The breeze increasing through the afternoon. We'll probably see a little bit more in the way of cloud again. And by Saturday morning, don't be too alarmed if you wake up it's a bit damp and drizzly. I think the bank holiday will tend to buck the trend, as it were, and we'll see it fine and dry for the latter part of Saturday afternoon and indeed on Sunday and Monday. But do keep updated because these things, I suppose, could change. That's the forecast.
Thank you very much. You've got bouncy eyes, Dada.
Tackling your consumer problems.
Sylvie wasn't happy with the quality of her telephone line. Kate's having problems with her leaky garage roof.
The JVS Show.
5 times they've not turned up for the appointment.
I've still got the leak, which is obviously getting worse.
Fighting for your rights.
I went to speak to your telephone company and I said, look, what on earth is going on?
The JVS Show.
Have they managed to fix the problem with the internet?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Absolutely wonderful. Really, it would not have happened without your intervention.
If you have a consumer problem,
we can do the same for you.
It took one phone call from yourselves, whereas I've been trying for over 6 months.
The JVS Show. Weekday mornings from 9 on BBC Three Counties Radio.
Oh, he's back as well. Back at 9 o'clock. We'll probably pop in here in what? Oh, I don't know. 35 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. 20 minutes. I don't know, 23 minutes. I don't know. What are you asking me for? I just sit here. Now, have you got an interest-only mortgage? Why? Have you thought how you might pay it off? The city regulator is today warning that more than 1 million people with this type of mortgage face a financial crunch when payback time comes. The Financial Conduct Authority says the average shortfall for these borrowers could be more than £70,000. Well, Annie Shaw is a financial advisor from St Albans. Annie, just for those who don't know, could you explain basically what an interest-only mortgage is?
Yes, right. There's 2 types of mortgage. The normal one is you take out a loan and you pay interest on it, obviously like an ordinary loan, and you pay back the capital, the amount of money that you borrowed at the same time. An interest-only one is where you don't pay back the capital. You only pay the interest each month. And either, as the Financial Conduct Authority is finding out, a lot of people have no way at all of paying back that capital, or you have to set up a parallel system to pay it back, which might be a savings plan.
So at the end of 20, 25 years, you could still have £200,000 to pay.
This is absolutely the problem. I mean, the thing is that we have to remember is that these things were devised because tricky people in the financial services industry thought there was a better way of paying back the money than just actually handing the money over to the lender every month, which is what you get with a capital repayment mortgage. They thought you could get something like an endowment, and that was the kind of a savings plan.
Oh, they worked, didn't they?
Lots and lots of money, and you'd have more money at the end of it because that money would be invested. did. And you get even more money at the end of the term, so you'd pay off the loan with a lump sum, and then you'd have a tidy sum and go on a cruise with it. Of course, we know that's all absolute, that's not happened at all, and people have got huge shortfalls. But then, of course, a new development came in the market where people actually didn't take out any savings plan at all. They just were thinking, well, it's cheaper, I can just pay the interest. It'd be like renting, and I won't own my house at the end of the period, and maybe I'll sell it. But of course, if you can't sell it, then that's a problem. And if you do sell it, where are you going to live?
It's because I was offered this. I got my first mortgage. Well, let me think. About 12 years ago, and they offered me an interest-only mortgage, and then about 5 years ago again. And I was scratching my head saying, but I can't understand why anyone would take this. It just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, imagine if you were, say, from overseas and you wanted to come and live in London or in home counties, expensive property, and you weren't going to stay in England,
right.
Then that might be a way to finance a property purchase. You just pay the interest on the loan, and then when you went back to France or Germany, whatever it is, you'd sell the house and there'd be no problem. The thing is, if you're going to live in your house, as most people are,
yes.
families, they are going to have to live somewhere. So they're then faced with buying, hoping that the property has gone up in value, and then selling it, and then trying to buy somewhere smaller with whatever the profit is on the raised house price. But of course, that doesn't always work.
So what exactly is the FCA saying?
Well, they wanted, they've just done a study, and basically they wanted to see the extent of the problem, because there's obviously been a lot of rumbling going on about what is, whether this is actually going to, cause a crisis for individuals and indeed for lenders, because they're going to have all these mortgages on their books and no means of people repaying them. I mean, they've got there's 600,000 homeowners are going to have to repay their interest-only mortgage before 2020, and they found that 100,000, so that's really a large percentage of them, are going to have a shortfall of more than £50,000. So that's people are going to actually have to find that money if they're going to stay in their homes or make other arrangements. They're going to have to rent, try and sell the house and hope they can get a satisfactory sum of money.
And do people know about this? The people that are involved, are they aware that this is, to use a common phrase, in a financial time bomb?
I think they are becoming aware, and also the lenders have been told to write to people and indeed ask them what their plans are for repayment. I mean, I've had people, who have written to me and say they're getting upset by this. They're saying, well, it's not the bank's business. I took this thing out. It's my business. I'm going to repay my loan. But actually, it is for your own good that you have a plan in place, whether it is to sell your house because you're going to go and live with your granny in Scotland or something. That might be one plan. Or that you're actually saving somewhere else. Maybe you've got an ISA, or, maybe you own another property. Maybe you've got a holiday property somewhere and you could sell that and use that to pay the debt on your home loan. But you really, if you've got one of these interest-only mortgages, you should be thinking about it. You should have a plan in place, whatever that is. Don't stick your head in the sand and think, oh, it'll all go away, because it's definitely not going to. It's going to be a problem.
Do you think that some people took these mortgages because they weren't looking 20, 25 years down the line, and it was the cheaper option at the time?
Absolutely, they were. And I think that's particularly, the FCA has found this, it's particularly in the southeast. It's where prices were rocketing up and people just actually couldn't afford to pay the capital repayment. So brokers or the lenders said, well, it's all right, why don't you just do it on an interest-only basis? The other thing is that people who've got into difficulty since they took out, they may have taken out a capital repayment mortgage, maybe they then lost their job, and the lenders have switched them onto interest-only to try and help them, to say, well, you can stay in your house if you just pay the interest, but they're going to have to find that capital payment at some point by some means, even if it means moving out of their house and selling it.
Annie, I have to ask you, how come you have so much energy at 5 minutes to 8 in the morning? I need what are you drinking over there? I need some.
Oh, yes, it's the super vitamins, I think.
Oh, I need
some super vitamins.
Annie, it's lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on this morning.
You're very welcome.
There we go. Annie Shaw, financial advisor from St Albans. I need some of that energy. I'm flagging after yesterday's migraine. I'm flagging a bit. Thank you very much, Annie. I'd love to speak to you if you've got an interest-only mortgage. What were you thinking? Did you get it because of some of the reasons Annie said, because you had a long-term plan that you were saving money elsewhere, or you were planning to sell it halfway through? Or were you just thinking, well, we do like this 4-bedroom house, but we couldn't afford it with a normal mortgage. So if we just get an interest-only mortgage, something will happen in the next 25 years. And now you're finding out you're, 5-7 years away from having to come up with that money and You haven't. Nothing has happened. If you got an interest-free mortgage. Oh, I'll sign up to that bad boy. If you've got an interest-only mortgage, could you give me a call? 08459 455 555. Why did you get it? And are you getting a little bit worried now? Are you starting to think, we're going to have to do something, we're going to have to sell this, we're going to have to find some money from somewhere? 08459 455 555. And after the news, 8 o'clock, we'll have the fascinating story of a gentleman who is married to his cousin. They got 5 kids, they're all fine and normal. It seems to ignore the fact that there could have been potential genetic risks. Amazing statistics. Between April 2009, March 2011, so 2 years, genetic conditions linked to cousin marriages was a factor in 20 out of 98 infant deaths in Luton. A fifth of all infant deaths in Luton were because of cousin marriages. All from the British Pakistani families. Many of the affected families had one or more previous infant deaths from the same conditions. A child had died because they were cousins. They had another child that died. 08459 455 555. Is it ever right? Is it ever acceptable? 2 questions. Is it acceptable for cousins to have children? I take it one step further. Is it ever right? Is it ever acceptable for cousins to marry? It's legal. Doesn't mean it's morally or ethically right, does it? 08459 455 555. Right. Let's get the travel news now. Here's Adam.
Beds, Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Cheers, Ian. Starting to look quite busy at the Black Cat Roundabout, the A1. Certainly from St Neots through to the Black Cat Roundabout is slow, and then slow down to Sandy as well. And then as you continue on to the A1M, that looks busy from Hitchin through to Stevenage. And of course, once you get down to London, the A1 is busy in the usual spot as you get down toward the end of the A1 and heading toward Brent Cross. Looking at the M25 and anti-clockwise, we've got delays from Maple Cross to the M4. It seems to be the slowest bit of the motorway right now, about 30 minutes to get between those two junctions. Clockwise looking slower than the average morning. We've got delays from junction 22 at London Coney toward 24 at Potters Bar heading into the roadworks section, maybe taking 10-15 minutes to get through there. Kings Langley A41 southbound is queuing toward the M25. Similarly, the A10 through Cheshunt could take you about 20 minutes to get from the Great Cambridge Road down to the M25 at junction 25. The North Orbital Road looking busy as well on the southbound side between the Park Street roundabout and the M25. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you very much, Adam. I was reading some of your Facebook comments, and that's why I was a little bit late playing that bed. Someone has very kindly said, Caroline, what's happened to you, Ian? You look about 12, thank you. Then Michael says, oh, look, Spock ears. Yeah.
Getting beds, hearts and bucks talking.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. I'm Catherine Boyle. The headlines: Luton baby deaths outstrip national average, 3.5 years for Lister Hospital conman, and decision day for Stadium MK.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
New figures suggest 1 in 5 baby deaths in Luton is the result of genetic defects arising from marriage between cousins. According to the Borough Council, the area's infant mortality rate is above the national average. They're meeting to discuss the implications tonight. Zafar Khan chairs the Luton Council of Faiths and has been married to his first cousin for 36 years. He says it's a question of culture.
It's not disgusting at all because this is quite common. It's part of the traditions and social customs evolve over centuries, and so perhaps whatever change takes place slowly.
A jury at Luton Crown Court has been told violent gang rivalry led to the death of a teenager who was deliberately knocked off his bike. 22-year-old Kyle Beckford denies the murder of Delaney Brown in September last year, as Simon Oxley reports.
The jury was told Beckford was in the Marsh Farm gang, whilst the victim was in the Lucy Farm gang. Videos for both were posted on YouTube, and there were a number of violent incidents in the weeks and months leading up to Delaney's death. His grandmother's home where he lived was attacked. On another occasion, machetes were drawn and the police were involved. The court heard a meeting was held in a McDonald's restaurant involving members of both gangs and their parents and families in an attempt to calm the situation. The case continues.
The Coronation Street actor Bill Roache is expected to make a statement this morning after being charged with 2 counts of raping a 15-year-old girl. It's alleged the attacks took place in the 1960s. ITV says Mr Roache will not appear in the soap until the legal proceedings are concluded. A 41-year-old man has been jailed for 3.5 years for his involvement in a series of thefts from hospitals, including the Lister in Stevenage. Lee Agnew has the details.
The court heard how in June last year, Adrian Garrick from Coventry stole a staff member's wallet before calling and tricking him into disclosing his bank details. He then withdrew £3,800 from his account. It was found that Garrick had committed 30 similar offences across the country over a 3-year period.
The new city regulator, the Financial Conduct Authority, has warned that hundreds of thousands of people with interest-only mortgages will struggle to pay them off. It believes more than 1 million borrowers are failing to set aside enough money to clear their loans and are likely to face shortfalls of tens of thousands of pounds. Voting is taking place today in the latest elections for Hertfordshire and Buckinghamshire County Councils. Polling stations are open until 10 o'clock tonight. In sport, organisers of the 2015 Rugby Union World Cup will reveal whether Stadium MK will be a host venue later this morning. 13 grounds will be chosen from a shortlist of 19. Coventry and Leicester are Milton Keynes' closest rivals. The weather dry and bright with a top temperature of 15 degrees Celsius, that's 59 Fahrenheit. There's more news and sport online at bbc.co.uk/3 counties. BBC 3 Counties Radio, first for news.
Oh, sorry, I had the microphone open for that. What do you feel about censorship, Kath?
What do I feel about it?
Yeah, I'm thinking of closing the Facebook page.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the 3 Counties Facebook page. I'm thinking of closing it.
Why don't you just stop saying stuff that aggravates people?
Well, no, I've not even said anything and people are aggravated. There's a picture of my delightful new haircut, done by the same gentleman that does Dermot O'Leary's hair.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And, OK, here are some of the comments. Caroline's nice. What's happened to you, Ian? You look about 12 in the picture. Thank you very much indeed. I'm 40 next month. Then Michael says, oh, Spock is...
Well, I think that's just rude.
Yeah. Lorraine says, I think Ian is morphing into Tim. Ah. And then Stephen says, Jedward's missing brother.
Oh.
I must buy a pineapple today. I don't know why I thought of that.
Youch.
Can we, I don't know what the rules are, but can I get that Facebook page closed down?
You kind of opened yourself to this, though, unfortunately. You stick a picture up there, people will talk.
Blooming internet. Blooming people. Blooming listeners. If you want to go and bully me online... A little bit of cyberbullying. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. Got some cracking stuff between now and JVS at 9 o'clock, including a fifth of infant deaths. This statistic is amazing. A fifth of infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. The Borough Council says they want to do something about it. Well, what can they do, really? We'll be hearing from the chair of the Luton Council of Faiths about why he married his cousin. Do you think cousins should be allowed to have children together? And I'd go a step further. Do you think cousins should be allowed to marry? 08459 455 555. We've been hearing all morning how criminals are conning hospital staff in Hertfordshire into handing over their bank details. They're going into hospitals to steal people's purses and then using that information as part of a bigger scam. Had something similar happen to you? And more than 1 million people with interest-only mortgages may be unable to repay them. Were you advised to get an interest-only mortgage? Why? They tried to sell one to me years ago, and fairly recently actually as well, and I walked out of there scratching my head saying, I can't understand where the benefit is in this is. You've still got to pay the money back. Facebook.com/BBC3CR. That seems to be where most of the cyberbullying's happening this morning. You can send me a text, 81333. Start your text 3CR, or you can give me a call, 08459 455 555.
BBC 3 Counties Radio.
1/5 of the infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. The statistic published by Luton Borough Council also shows the number of children who die in infancy in Luton is 60% higher than the national average. Well, this evening the council is holding a public meeting to discuss the issue. Zafar Khan from Luton has been married to his first cousin for 36 years. He spoke to our reporter, Justin Dealey.
We have 5 children, ranging from the age of 30, almost 35 to 21 next month.
And they're all healthy children?
Yes, indeed, yes.
I mean, there could be people saying that this is disgusting and this shouldn't be happening. Is this still happening as commonly now as what it did when you married your first cousin?
Well, I mean, I think it's not disgusting at all, because this is quite common. It's part of the traditions, and I think social customs evolve over centuries, and so perhaps whatever change takes place slowly. And
would you have felt guilty if your baby had suffered long-term damage because you'd had a baby with your cousin? Would you have felt guilty, or would you say, well, it's our culture, that's what we believe in, and these things happen?
A parent who has a child with some kind of deformity or disability is always very sad. If you as a parent, and many parents in society, not just in Muslim or Asian society, but in all societies have children with disability, and it must be heartbreaking to have a child with disability. So, I mean, I would look at it that way. If you have a disabled child, do you feel guilty? I don't think so.
But then again, if I have a baby with my fiancée, there's no risk associated with that compared to marrying my cousin.
Perhaps not.
Do you think things will now change? If more education, more information is out there about the harm that could be caused to your baby, do you think things will change now?
No, people are more conscious, because we are changing, society is changing, we are becoming more aware of medical science, and wherever people do have tests and so on, and wherever it's appropriate, people refrain from marrying in the close kin. But it will take time, I think.
Is it cruel then if a married couple who are cousins decide to have a child knowing that their child could die or be deformed? Is that cruel?
It's not a question of parents being cruel. It's a question of whether parents are aware of the risks. Any parents could be potentially having a child with deformity, not necessarily cousins. But of course, there are risks involved with marrying in a close kin group, and I think people are becoming more and more aware of that.
Okay, sorry to push you on this answer.
No.
It's a yes or no. Do you think if people have a baby together, if they're marrying their cousin and they have a baby together, that they know the risks, yet they continue to have that baby? Is that cruel? Yes or no?
If they knew the risk, they should not. A marriage of people who would potentially have a child of that kind should not actually enter into marriage. If they know that there is a potential of having a child who would be born with some deformities or disabilities.
Well, Dr. Nazreen Ali is a senior research fellow in public health at the Institute for Health Research at the University of Bedfordshire. Good morning, Doctor.
Hi there.
Doctor, you've carried out a study into cousin marriage. Are people aware of the potential risks?
Yes, we carried out a study looking at attitudes and beliefs of the Pakistani Kashmiri community, and we did this research specifically in Sparkbrook, Birmingham, which has a sort of a similar community as Luton. And we found, yes, that they are aware of stillbirth and genetic conditions, but there's a poor understanding of hereditary risk. And interestingly, there was a reluctance to accept the link between cousin marriage and birth, explanations. And where there was any reluctance to accept these explanations, it was having a child with a deformity or abnormality was really attributed to the will of God. Women tended to argue that, they would have screening for genetic conditions, but they wouldn't terminate pregnancies, because this was actually very contradictory to the Islamic principles of predestiny. Interestingly, there was sort of a lot of discussion about the negative emphasis on cousin marriage currently and, associated genetic risk. And they felt that discussions around cousin marriage, was stigmatizing this really important cultural practice and, therefore the community. They wanted more information on how cousin marriage was linked to disabilities. I mean, like your earlier speaker, Zafar Khan said, they did want more information on what the link between cousin marriage and disability was.
But would they believe that information if they got it, or as you say, would they believe it was the will of God? It's science versus faith, isn't it?
Well, it's about sort of giving people information, ensuring that they understand that information, and then they can use that information to make informed choices. I think that's the key. So if you give communities, regardless of their ethnicity, information, they will be able to make informed choices based on that information.
Luton Borough Council is offering genetic screening and is going to increase their offering of genetic screening, I think. Will the members of the Pakistani community act on those findings then? Is there any point in Luton Borough Council trying to encourage this?
Well, the important thing is we've got to understand that the practice of cousin marriage is changing because the patterns of marriage are changing. The patterns of marriage are changing because although cousin marriage is still valued by the younger generation for, the respect, financial and emotional support, it's changing because their marriage preferences are changing, in sort of line with the desire to sort of, make sure that you share the common language with your partner, common education, so, general background. So I think we have to sort of factor those situations in. In addition, I think that if you inform the community, if you, offer a service and the service is culturally sensitive, it doesn't stigmatise the practice, I'm sure that, it would be a positive intervention and lead to good practice. We have evidence from other parts of the UK with high Kashmiri Pakistani populations practicing consanguinity where there have been sort of very, good, well-designed interventions that are making, having sort of the effect of informing people and allowing them to make, relevant choices. We're actually we're going to try and engage the local community to ask them about awareness of consanguinity risk and their views on interventions related to cousin marriage. What are the barriers and facilitators towards sort of accessing services currently, and, what they feel about, the addition of, very targeted, specific services.
Can I read you? We're running out of time. Can I read you a couple of emails and texts we've had, Doctor? Maff in Hanslope says, in modern times, the wedding of a cousin should be illegal, as we no longer live in small, remote communities. Even the royal family have stopped it. And Sue on the email says, cousin marriage was banned by the Catholic Church in medieval times because of the close relationship and poor infant mortality. You had to get a dispensation of consanguinity of the Pope. I don't know what that means. If they knew back then it caused genetic mutations, it stands to reason that we should ban it now by law in this country for all people. It may save a few lives.
Well, we haven't banned smoking. We've encouraged people to stop smoking, but we've given them the information. Why should this be treated any differently?
Well,
we've allowed individuals to have the choice.
The statistics, though, here in Luton, over 2 years, 2009 to 2011, a fifth of all infant deaths were caused by cousin marriages, and many of the affected families had one or more previous infant deaths from the same conditions. We should ban that, shouldn't we?
Well, no, because we have to factor in the fact that this is that statistic, actually, what's underlying it is quite complex. You can't,
A fifth of children are dying because of genetic defects due to cousin marriages. We should ban that.
No, not necessarily, because it's a complex interplay between physiology, deprivation, behaviour, and cultural factors. So we cannot just, attribute a statistic to cultural factors. No, I wouldn't ban it.
I'm not saying cultural, I'm saying to cousin marriages, that by coincidence it happens that these are all from British Pakistani families. So 20 deaths...
I'm using consanguinity, cousin marriage, as a metaphor for a cultural practice in this context.
So 20 deaths, sometimes from families where they've had more than one death, that's acceptable?
I think have we banned smoking?
Is that acceptable?
We need to put in interventions.
Is that acceptable?
Will support people. We should put in interventions that should support people to be able to make.
I'm going to ask you one more time. Simple yes or no answer. Simple yes or no answer. 20 deaths of children over 2 years that could have been prevented, often within families where they've had other children die. Is that acceptable, yes or no?
We need to put in
a yes or no, Dr. Nazreen Ali. A yes or no answer. Is that acceptable?
I think it's a really complex situation.
OK, we're going to end it there. If you're going to sit on the fence, we're going to end it there. I don't think it is acceptable. I don't think 20 deaths over 2 years of kiddies, when it could be prevented, is acceptable. Right, a little bit later than usual, 8:17. Here's the travel news now with Adam Glynn.
Beds, Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
A couple of patches of slow-moving traffic on the A41. Eastbound in Aylesbury, it's looking slow between the Esso roundabout and the Woodlands roundabout. And as you head down toward the M25, it gets busy through Kings Langley as well. The A5 into Dunstable, that's looking slow from the A505 at the West Street traffic lights. The A5 through Whipsnade's looking busy as well. Lynch Hill to the M1 at Junction 9. A10 slow through Cheshunt with delays that start at the Great Cambridge Road and continue down to the M25 at Junction 25, taking maybe 20 minutes to get through the traffic there. Clockwise M25 you'll find slow into the roadworks. London Coney at Junction 22 to Potters Bar at Junction 24. Anti-clockwise slow from Maple Cross to the M4. That stretch taking about half an hour to navigate at present. A1 into London, busy from Stirling Corner to Mill Hill Circus. As for the trains, we've got no major problems or delays reported at present. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. Right, 8:18. It's Thursday, the 2nd of May. I'm Iain Lee, and these are your headlines on BBC Three Counties Radio. New figures suggest 1 in 5 baby deaths in Luton is the result of genetic defects arising from marriage between cousins. A jury at Luton Crown Court has been told violent gang rivalry led to the death of Delaney Brown, who was deliberately knocked off his bike last September. In sport, organisers of the 2015 Rugby Union World Cup will reveal whether Stadium NK will be a host venue later this morning. The weather today in Beds, Herts and Bucks, dry and bright with a top temperature of 15 degrees. And dear listener, I have a surprise for you. Just say a brief hello.
Oh, hello.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Every weekday from 3, Roberto Perrone with the best local news stories.
I get to meet a lot of really interesting people with the most amazing stories.
We feel as if we haven't been taken notice of.
Yesterday we heard that the bank had gone, but today it's still there.
The cat got delivered up in Kabul. You should be back in the UK in 2 months.
With the best local talking points.
Do some of the bakers have flapjack fights?
No, of course not, Roberto. Well, not in our shops.
Roberto Perrone, weekdays from 3.
On BBC Three Counties Radio.
Well, some of you will be dancing in the streets, some of you will be turning your radios off and watching Cash in the Attic and Homes Under the Hammer.
Don't.
No.
Don't. They won't.
No,
I've had 3 days of that. No wonder people listen to my show. That's all I can say. Daytime TV's rubbish.
Have you learnt a few tips from the master, Mr. Jeremy Kyle? Have you been telling people to shut up?
I've not watched that. I didn't. I find that very depressing.
Yeah.
See all those ghastly people.
I've got to be honest.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting anything from Tim at all. He was good.
He's very good.
He was good.
He's learnt from the best, you see.
Yes, I know. Well, I've been giving him some tips when I get the chance. And he really is. When I say good, I mean maybe you want to take the rest of the week off good.
Thanks. Well, we'll make sure we get him standing in for you next time you're off.
No,
with one of your migraines.
I had Dealey yesterday. Dealey's too good as well.
Yes, he's very good. We always get a lot of emails congratulating him.
Well, Facebook is all up Dealey's backside. Oh, can we get Dealey back in? Oh, Dealey was really good.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, you mustn't take it personally.
Well, what, when they're saying I'm not very good and Dealey's better than me? How can I not take that?
They don't mean it. They know not what they say.
It's nice to have you back. You're looking very, very smart. Lovely shirt.
I was just telling everyone upstairs,
yes,
as is my wont,
yes,
that I've got a very smart check shirt on.
Yeah.
And it absolutely matches the lining of my trousers.
Really?
Obviously, you can only tell this when you have to remove my trousers. So if ever there was a day I was going to be run over, let today be the day.
Oh, go dancing in the main streets.
In A&E, as they surgically remove my trousers, they'll appreciate the lining. They'll say, this man had a touch of class, didn't he?
Have you got good pants on?
Yes.
Excellent. There we go. Fantastic. Yeah. What's coming up on your show this morning? Because that's what you're here to plug.
It's quite true. Yes. It's what I'm here to plug. By the way, I like your haircut.
Thank you, Jonathan. You're one of the nice people in the office.
It's beautiful.
God bless you.
Coming up at 9, should people charged with sex crimes be given anonymity? The Independent newspaper has carried out a poll that's found 3 in 4 people believe those accused of sexual assaults should be granted anonymity. And it's a very topical survey. Today, the papers are full of news about the actor who plays Ken Barlow in Coronation Street. The BBC's reporting that he's due to be charged with 2 counts of raping a 15-year-old girl in the 1960s. Well, obviously from 9 we're not going to be talking about specific cases for legal reasons, but I want to talk about the long-held practice of naming those charged with sex crimes. Moira McGowan, chairman of the Bar Council, recently argued that suspects in sex cases should enjoy the same right of anonymity as defendants. What do you think? From 9, should people charged with sex crimes be given anonymity? Call me 08459 455 555. We'll discuss it this morning on the big phone in at 9.
What cufflinks have you got on?
Oh, they're hot and cold taps. What's funny about that?
I thought it was like the spinner from a roulette wheel.
Look, if you look at them, they've got hot. That's hot.
Hot, yes.
And then that one's got cold.
You bought me some raunchy cufflinks, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Yes, I did. Yeah, lovely.
Have you ever worn them?
No, they're in the bin. That day they went in the bin. But thanks. Those ones as well.
How hurtful.
Probably. Well, you know, that's what you should deserve.
Call 08459 455 555.
08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
If you want to take part in today's show, facebook.com/BBC3CR or give me a call, 08459 455 555. Hospital staff in Hertfordshire have been targeted by criminals who've conned them into handing over their bank details. Thieves have been stealing their wallets, then phoning their victims, pretending to be from their banks. This week, 41-year-old Adrian Garrick from Coventry has been jailed for withdrawing nearly £4,000 from the account of a worker at the Lister Hospital in Stevenage. It was also revealed he committed 30 similar offences across the country over a 3-year period. Earlier on, I spoke to Susan, not her real name, who works at a hospital in the Three Counties and was the victim of a similar scam.
The first I knew about it, I got a phone call through to the desk where I work. Someone posing as my bank, telling me that my account was trying to be used in the Oxfordshire area and someone was trying to withdraw £2,000. And that was the first I knew about it.
And did it all sound right? Did they sound? Did you kind of think, oh, this is my bank on the phone? Yeah, okay.
No, I didn't, because I wasn't aware. The first alarm bells that rung were that I wasn't aware that work had, or the bank had, my work details.
Right.
I thought they only had my home number and my mobile number, so that was the first thing that rung alarm bells. The second thing was I'd only just been to lunch about half an hour previous and I had my purse with all my cards in it.
Yeah.
So, no, it did ring alarm bells.
Well, that was Susan speaking to me earlier on in the show. Joined now by Detective Constable Emma Landucci, who investigated the thefts when Hertfordshire Police led the investigation. Good morning, Emma.
Good morning, Ian.
What happened in this case involving Adrian Garrick?
Well, initially we had the report at the Lister Hospital of this theft from a doctor, which I started looking into. And it was quickly apparent that this was the work of a national fraud gang known as the Coventry Falcons. We did have some suspects who were part of this gang, and I managed to collate a lot of CCTV around the card usages for this particular doctor. And from that point on, we were able to at least have some suspects in mind, which I could then work on.
And how long? It sounds very involved, Emma. I know from personal experience that collecting CCTV footage from bank machines and from different places, it takes a long time. How long did this operation last?
I would say I've been working fairly consistently on it for about 9 months.
Wow.
But that does include, obviously, all the additional nationwide offences.
It does strike me as incredible that that hospitals would be targeted. I mean, this is what scammers do, don't they? They target vulnerable people. But why were hospitals being targeted in particular?
I mean, in my opinion, the hospitals were being targeted because they're very busy places. There's a lot of access where other members of staff might not know staff on other wards or other departments, or they might assume that somebody's a visitor to the hospital. And this gang were very professional. They always wore very smart clothing, appeared to work at the hospital, sometimes had lanyards around their neck or a mobile phone to their ear or carried a file. So they were able to go relatively unnoticed. And hospital staff, especially the doctors, they knew would tend to be a higher paid salary.
What can people do, either as a hospital staff worker or just general public, in order to prevent this from happening to them?
The steps I would recommend would be, firstly, never ever give out your PIN number over the telephone. Your bank would never ever ask for it over the telephone. Also, it would be highly unusual for your bank to ring you via hospital switchboard. And if you have any doubts at all, obtain a number from the person that's calling you. And 9 times out of 10, then they'll get cold feet and won't provide you with the number and hang up.
These, not necessarily going into hospitals and stealing things, but these kind of phone-based scams are becoming more prevalent. We mentioned it on the show a few weeks ago. It's happened to my mother-in-law in the last couple of weeks. If people get a phone call at home and they say, you have to act now, £2,000 is being taken from your bank account, quick, give us your details. Certain people, I guess older people, are more likely to panic, aren't they, and more likely to give them those details.
Yes, these people are very professional and they do come across as extremely convincing. But again, I would just say that if there are any doubts at all, ask the person for a number, ask them for a central switchboard number that they can ring back and ask to speak to that person by name. And generally then you'll find out, yes, it's part of a scam. But never ever hand over bank details over the phone.
And also, if possible, as well, call from a separate phone, because they have this handy trick of keeping the line busy sometimes, don't they?
Yes, that's true as well, yes.
Emma, thank you so much, and thank you for the hard work you put into this and seeing it through to its conclusion.
Thanks, Ian.
Excellent stuff. Detective Constable Emma Landucci. 9 months working on that case with positive results. You see? The police do get a bad name sometimes, and then you speak to someone like that who's done a cracking job, very humble, caught a very naughty person, part of a gang, sent them to prison. Superb. Excellent stuff. 08459 455 555. Travel news now. Adam Glynn.
Beds, Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Just keeping an eye on the A6. Speed sensors suggesting it's slowing a little bit as you come from Clop Hill down toward Barton-le-Clay, and in fact going the other way, both ways along that stretch, looking a bit busy at present. From Hitchin through to Stevenage on the A602 is slow, and between junction 9 and 8 of the A1M you might find a little bit of traffic at the minute. A10 southbound delays from the Great Cambridge Road through to the M25 at Enfield, so that's mainly through Cheshunt, about 20 minutes to get through there at present. Aylesbury, the A41 is slow from the Esso roundabout to the Woodlands roundabout, and then again southbound through Kings Langley and down toward the M25. London-bound M40 is slowing up from Stokenchurch at Junction 5 to High Wycombe at Junction 4. As you come right in towards London, it's not looking too bad at present, but it all slows down if you're using the A40 as your route into London. In Watford, the A412 is pretty heavy just after the Town Hall roundabout, mainly on the westbound side. M25 delays clockwise, we've got them from London Coney to Potters Bar Junction 22 to 24, anti-clockwise from Maple Cross to the M4, taking about half an hour around there. And on the trains, things still running nicely. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, thanks very much. 8:30, let's get the news and sport now. Here's Catherine Boyle.
Getting beds, Herts and Bucks talking.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Good morning. The headlines. New figures suggest 1 in 5 baby deaths in Luton is the result of genetic defects arising from marriage between cousins. A jury at Luton Crown Court's been told violent gang rivalry led to the death of Delaney Brown, who was killed when he was deliberately knocked off his bike last September. The Coronation Street actor Bill Roache is expected to make a statement this morning after being charged with 2 counts of raping a 15-year-old girl during the 1960s.
Beds, Hearts and Bucks Sport.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Stadium MK will find out later this morning if it's a venue for the 2015 Rugby World Cup. 13 from 19 venues on the shortlist will be hosting games during the tournament, and Milton Keynes' main rivals replace Coventry and Leicester. Bayern Munich will play Borussia Dortmund in the first ever All-German Champions League final later this month after beating Barcelona 3-0 at the Nou Camp in their semi-final second leg to record a 7-0 aggregate victory. Chelsea, meanwhile, will look to book their place in Europa League final tonight. They take a 2-1 lead into the second leg of their semi-final against Swiss side Basel at Stamford Bridge. And despite that advantage, the Chelsea interim manager Rafa Benitez isn't taking anything for granted.
My concern is that we will be thinking that we are in the final. It's not the case. We'll play against a very good team, a team that has scored goals away. So everybody has to realise that will be tough, will be difficult, and hopefully I will be wrong and we can do a great game and score a lot of goals. But first of all, we have to win.
The defending world snooker champion Ronnie O'Sullivan says he won't be returning to the Crucible even if he wins a 5th title. Speaking after his 13-4 quarter-final win over Stuart Bingham, O'Sullivan revealed he's not enjoying his return and that he only ended his exile from the sport to fund his children's private education. He feels it's time to move on.
I think it's about time I look for something else, but you never know, I might plan a few PTC events. And you never know with the way the game's changing all the time. Barry Hearn's always changing formats, seedings, this and that. So it might suit me to plan the odd little event. But as far as putting my life into it, it's not going to work for me.
And that's your latest news and sport. More from me at 9 o'clock.
I've had enough.
What's the matter?
The internet.
Right.
It's getting on my nerves. Right. Stephen Boothby. Right, so I mentioned to Adam, who does the travel, that he's a sniffer. Right, he's constantly sniffing, and he says, "Oh, I can't keep blowing my nose into my tissue. So get a handkerchief." Right, that's what gentlemen do. They have handkerchiefs. I have several handkerchiefs. I prefer the white plain ones, but at the moment I'm carrying a navy blue one.
I'm married to a hanky man. I think it sets apart the men from the boys.
You can say you think it's sexy. That's weird, but it does. It does. It sets apart the men from the boys.
Yeah.
Right. Stephen Boothby on Facebook. That's minging carrying a cloth. Minging. That's minging carrying a cloth covered in snot, Mr. Lee. Use a tissue, then wash your hands. I remember back in the 70s, my mum would put a tissue up her shirt sleeve. Yes. Do you remember that? She put it up her shirt sleeve.
I do that. That's part of the mum code.
Oh, it's horrible.
And then you lick it and wipe the face with it.
I wouldn't go that far. That's disgusting.
Across beds, hearts and bucks, this is Iain Lee on BBC Three Counties Radio.
I do remember that. My mum, do mums still do this now? They can't do it in the 21st century. It's got to be a 70s and 80s thing. Would have the tissue shoved up her shirt sleeve or her jumper sleeve. And it would be the same tissue, Kath's right there, it's the same tissue that she would blow her nose with and then at some point later in the day lick it and wipe a bit of dirt off my face. Unbelievable. Lots coming up between now and JVS at 9 o'clock, including is enough being done to get illegal guns off the streets? It follows another shooting in Luton this week. It's the 12th gun-related crime in the town this year. Well, I'll be speaking to a professor of criminology to find out what he thinks. And cousins, should they be allowed to marry? A huge number of infant deaths in Luton have been caused by cousins marrying. I'll be honest, I think it's wrong. 08459 455 555. Facebook.com, while that page is still there. I'm going to see if I can get it closed down later on in the day. Facebook.com/BBC 3CR. Is enough being done to get illegal guns off the streets? Follows another shooting in Luton this week. It's the 12th gun-related crime in the town this year. And while it's always a pleasure to go to Justin, I'm bored of handing over to you to talk about another gun story in Luton.
Absolutely incredible. As you mentioned, it's the 12th one this year. People are concerned in the town. I've spent the morning in talking to teenagers in Luton, been asking them whether enough is being done to take these guns off the streets. Some very revealing stories coming up here. This is what people had to say. Well, you're 19 years old. Do you think enough is being done here in Luton to get these guns off the streets?
I think there's no real response to gun crime or knife crime or any sort of gang violence. You hear more about what hasn't been done than what has been done.
And you haven't, thankfully, got involved in these gangs, but what about other people that you went to school with?
Yeah, a few people. My years below, they've got involved in some with serious crime, others less serious. People I've been to school with have been killed or killed people. So.
How concerning is that for you growing up here in Luton when you know these things are happening?
Well, I wouldn't want to bring my kids up here, no way. I'm not worried for myself, really, because it's sort of past that phase. I'm less impressionable now, but my children or my friends' younger brothers and sisters, that is a bit worrying for them.
So you're worried, and you're saying about this age of around 16.
Yeah.
You didn't, but you're worried for them if they get in with the wrong crowd. Yeah. They could unfortunately join these gangs where they will be given a knife or a gun.
Yes, I do think that, yeah. At that age, you're quite impressionable.
Somebody with me now who's a teenager. Do you think enough is being done to take illegal guns off the street here in your town?
No, not really. It's mainly because now there's less police on the street. You've got more of the gangs going out, thinking they can do stuff and then get away with it. It's just not enough, so there needs to be more police on the street, more warnings in place, just things like that.
You've had the chance to join these gangs, but you haven't got into them. Can you tell us why?
Well, it's just because I know the consequences. I know that people are going to get hurt. I just don't like doing that kind of stuff, and at the end of the day, I don't want to mess my life up to go and join a gang. It's just not worth it.
So you know for an absolute fact that there are people in Luton right now in these gangs who are carrying knives. You know that for a fact?
Yes, there definitely is people in Luton who are carrying knives and guns.
Have you seen the guns yourself?
I haven't seen the guns. I've seen people with knives, but I haven't seen people with guns.
So had you have joined one of these gangs then, would you have been given a gun?
Most probably, or a knife. And you would have been told what to do with it, just everything like that you need to know.
Can this really be tackled now? Has it gone too far? Has the problem become too big in Luton?
I think it might have done. There's so many people now on the streets with guns and knives, it's just so silly. Because if they would have taken earlier measures, then maybe less knives and stuff would have been put on the street.
Another 19-year-old with me right now. Do you think that enough is being done to get these guns off the streets here in your hometown of Luton?
No, I don't think enough's been done because, I don't know, like, something needs to be done to stop it.
I mean, do you know people that have got involved in these gangs?
Not personally, but friends of friends and stuff like that. I don't want to raise my children when I do get of age in this kind of like environment. So
when you have children, you'd actually take yourselves and your children and you move them out of Luton?
Yeah, definitely.
And Justin, we have to be careful. I don't want this to be one of those panic broadcasts. There are guns everywhere in the three counties. Luton is a death trap. None of that. It's still pretty much safe to walk the streets and no one should be overly concerned. But 12 incidents since the beginning of this year. We've done it every week.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk to Bedfordshire Police, they will say that Luton is certainly a safe town, but of course when you go and speak to people, it's quite interesting this morning speaking to teenagers, they've all got a story to tell, haven't they? You know, one person there who knows somebody that he went to school with, that person was sadly killed because they got involved in a gang, another person who got offered the chance to join a gang, and again this argument which keeps on cropping up, the lady at the end there saying that when she does have children, she is going to move out of Luton. So as much as Bedfordshire Police say Luton is a safe place to be, and if anything these crimes are being blown out of proportion, a lot of people still are very, very concerned about what is happening in Luton.
And it's odd, isn't it? I growing up, there was never talk of guns when I was a youngster. I saw a few knives, and I saw I was in a situation where a knife got whipped out and someone got slashed when I was, 15, 16. But there was never, ever talk of guns.
Unfortunately, I think it's just a sign of the times. I think if you speak to a number of people who could have got involved in these gangs, they will say the same thing to you. By having a gun, it's almost like a status symbol to them. It's all about being macho. When I was younger, again, you could always get involved in the wrong crowd, certainly, but hopefully the people that we've spoken to this morning have steered clear of that because they want to have a much better future for them and their family.
Listen, listen, kids, if you want to be macho, go and look at Justin Dealey, all right? Go and look at him with his snoods and his jumpers and his shirts undone to his navel.
Exactly.
That is macho personified.
Yeah. If you want a photograph, let me know.
Justin, thank you very much indeed.
Call 08459 455 555.
08459 455 555.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Naughty scammers. There's been a rise in scams on hospital staff. These naughty people go in, nick their purses or their wallets, get their phone and bank details, phone them up, say, we're your bank, we need your PIN number now. We spoke to an expert earlier on, about 50% of the hospital staff, nurses, doctors, would give the details. Well, what is security like in hospitals? Marlene's in Dunstable. Good morning, Marlene.
Hi.
You've got a story about hospital security, have you?
Yes, I was in hospital about 4 weeks ago, and I had to be kept in for 12 hours for observation. And I was put in a 4-bedded room. There was sort of curtains, obviously, between the 4 cubicles. And they wheeled this lady into the cubicle next door, and a really rowdy crowd came in. There were about 6 or 7 chaps. And the nurse poked her head round the curtain to me and my daughter-in-law and was mouthing something. We're going, what? And she said, put your handbags the other side of your bed.
Really?
Yeah. I was horrified.
And isn't that sad? Because I say I went to visit my cousin, who was in an isolated room. He had to gown up and put a mask on and disinfect and everything before we went in to see him.
Yeah.
And I left my bag outside, and the nurse came and said, oh, don't leave it there. I said, oh, sorry, is it in your way? She went, no, someone will nick it.
Yeah.
But what? In a hospital on a really serious ward? She went, oh, yeah, someone might have it. It's sad, isn't it?
We'd left ours on, my daughter-in-law had got hers on the floor and mine was on the floor by her, but that side by their cubicle. And she went, move on the other side.
Well, is everything all right now, Marlene?
Yes, fine, thank you.
Do you know when that thing? I had this when you go into hospital, right? And they treat you and stuff. And they say, yeah, we want you to stay for another 12 hours for observation.
Yeah.
Don't you just think, oh, come on, just let me go now. Come on, please.
I was terrified.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh God! What did you think? What, you didn't think that was it, did you?
I did.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, it was a suspected heart attack. I mean, it turned out not to be.
Bit of indigestion.
Yeah, but no, they haven't found out what it was.
Oh, really? Oh, Marlene.
Yeah.
Marlene, listen, take care of yourself. I'm glad everything's feeling better. Now, back to this story we're talking about. 1/5 of the infant deaths in Luton are caused by genetic conditions linked to cousin marriage. Just give me some of these stats again. Not too many numbers, don't worry. Between 2009 and 2011, genetic conditions linked to cousin marriages was a factor in 20 out of 98 infant deaths in Luton. A fifth. Mohammed's from Luton. Good morning, Mohammed.
Good morning, Ian.
What do you feel about cousins marrying and having children together?
Well, I think it's wrong, and if people follow the advice of, especially this is in Muslim community, so if they follow the advice of Islam or the recommendations of Islam, they shouldn't marry cousins each other because Islam discourages cousin marriages. And
where is it discouraged? Is it in the Quran that it's mentioned specifically?
I don't think it's in Quran, but after that, in Hadith, the saying of the Prophet and his followers.
So it's recommended not to. And if you go back hundreds of years, the same in this country. If you go back hundreds of years, you can kind of understand why. A lot of it's to do with business. A lot of it's to do with people living in small villages and not travelling too far. But in the 21st century, in the modern world, I mean, I've been to Pakistan and people travel all over the place in Pakistan, and in England and Britain, you would think this practice would kind of have disappeared.
Yeah, and I can tell you, there's a philosophy behind discouraging this as well, because and the great philosopher of Islam, like Imam Ghazali, has said, why is it discouraged? And he has said that when cousins marry, especially if they don't like each other, and when they marry, they do not have a strong sexual appetite for each other. That's why they have the babies which are born and they have problems.
Do you know anybody who's married their cousin, Mohammed?
Loads.
Loads?
Yeah, and especially if those who like each other or they didn't have forced marriage, or they all had good kids. And
well, that's luck, surely, though, more than anything. Isn't it?
Yeah. My brother is married to first cousin, and they have 5 kids, and they are all healthy. And
but are you aware that that's down to luck, Mohammed, or are you saying that that's because they love each other?
I would say if they like each other,
they'll have good children.
they'll have good kids.
Can I flag up something very quickly, because we haven't got much time? Do you not think what you've just said is possibly part of the problem? Because you seem to be saying that if the cousins like each other, they'll have good children. If they don't like each other, they'll have children who don't live or are deformed.
Yeah.
Coming from a science point of view, that's not the case, Mohammed. That's purely luck, whether they've had good or bad children. It's a genetic thing.
Well, genetic thing, that's because genetic thing is the result of something, isn't it?
Well, genetic is science, and what you're suggesting is faith.
Yeah, it's not fair. But if they like each other, then
they'll have good children.
Any problem.
Okay, well, there we go. That's Mohammed there from Luton. I think illustrating part of the problem. I don't want to be too rude to Mohammed, but I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? There, exactly in that phone call. He seems to believe that the cousins marrying is not appropriate, but if they do and they don't like each other, their kids will die or they'll be deformed. But if they like each other, they'll have good kids. I literally don't know what to say to that. But thank you for the call, Mohammed. It's appreciated. Right, travel news now. Adam Glynn.
Beds, Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
The anti-clockwise M25 queues sort of moved back a little bit. It's busiest now from Chorleywood at junction 18 to the M40 at junction 16, and once you get past there, it does move a little bit more freely. Clockwise still slow from London Coney at 22 to Potters Bar at 24, though, taking maybe 10-15 minutes to get through. London-bound M40 is heavy from Stokenchurch at junction 5 to High Wycombe at 4, and the A404's looking slow into High Wycombe along Marlow Hill. Aylesbury, you've got traffic building on the A41, busy, but it is moving between the Oxford Road roundabout and the A413 at the Walton Street roundabout. And then if the A41's your route down toward the M25, expect queues as you come down toward junction 20. The A10 still slow southbound through Cheshunt from the A1170 down to the M25. The A1 at the Black Cat roundabout's looking particularly slow at the minute. We've got queues approaching the A421 there, and it's also slow as you go through Sandy, approaching the A603. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties Radio.
Adam, thanks very much. 8:47, Thursday the 2nd of May. I'm Iain Lee, and these are your headlines on BBC Three Counties Radio. New figures suggest 1 in 5 baby deaths in Luton is the result of genetic defects arising from marriage between cousins. A jury at Luton Crown Court has been told violent gang rivalry led to the death of Delaney Brown, who was deliberately knocked off his bike last September. In sport, the defending world snooker champion Ronnie O'Sullivan says he won't be returning to the Crucible even if he wins a 5th title. Right, coming up to 8:48, let's get the weather now. Elizabeth Rosini.
Beds, Herts and Bucks weather.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
And a very good morning to you. Another beautiful spring day with lots of sunshine around, sticking with us for the rest of the day today and for much of tomorrow as well. We're going to see highs today of 15 or 16 degrees Celsius. Could see a little bit higher than that perhaps in the larger towns, perhaps 17 degrees Celsius, 63 in Fahrenheit. It's going to be another gorgeous day. Bit of fair weather cloud through the afternoon, but not quite enough to spoil the sunshine. The pollen count is high if you care about such things, and will stay high into tomorrow too. So just light winds today, light winds overnight tonight as well. A fine end to the day, and then clear and cold overnight with temperatures again dropping to around 3 or 4 degrees Celsius locally, possibly just in the rural spots a touch of ground frost into tomorrow morning. Tomorrow again fine and dry, lots of sunshine around, particularly through the morning, but into the afternoon we'll see the southwesterly breeze pick up and we'll start to introduce a little bit more cloud. That's a weather front coming through. So for the bank holiday, I have to say that most of it bucks the bank holiday trend here. It's looking fine and dry with some good spells of sunshine apart from Saturday. It's quite possible that we will see a bit of a damp start to the day with a few outbreaks of rain and a bit of cloud, but don't worry because it looks like it will cheer up into the afternoon. And that's the forecast.
Thank you very much indeed.
You can listen to BBC Three Counties Radio in so many different ways.
On FM
95.5, 103.8 and 104.5.
On AM
630 and 1161.
Online at bbc.co.uk/Three Counties.
And on digital radio. Retune your digital radio now and look out for BBC 3CR.
Bringing local radio to you.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
08459 455 555. Here every weekday between 6 and 9. JVS is back this morning at 9 o'clock. Mortgages. Loads and loads of people have got a problem coming up because they've got interest-only mortgages. News that more than 1 million people with this type of mortgage face a financial crunch when payback time comes. Well, I've been asking you to call in this morning if you have got an interest-only mortgage. So basically, you pay the interest off every month. At the end of 20, 25 years, you've still got the 150 grand, 200 grand, whatever it was your house cost to pay. Barry's in Houghton Regis. Morning, Barry.
Good morning, Lee, is it?
It's Ian, but
Ian,
I'll answer to anything.
Yeah.
Call me Doris if you want.
No, I'll call you Ian.
Thank you, sir. You've got an interest-only mortgage, have you?
Well, I haven't, no, but I had one.
Why did you take one, Barry?
I took one out because it was the thing to do at the time, because if you were sold a package of an insurance policy and a mortgage, and people all around you, relatives, were having these same mortgages, and at maturity, they were finishing, the mortgage was paid off, they had a nice little extra bonus which you could do things with, buy a car, get the house refurbished, all sorts of things, and it was the thing to do. But then suddenly, in my case, 3 years before maturity, the insurance company informed me that there would be a shortfall, a small shortfall, which was nothing, about 2 weeks' salary or something.
Yeah.
The second year from maturity, that had gone up to something like 3 months' salary to pay it off. And by the time it was due for maturity, there was something like several £1,000s.
Wow.
Consequences were I had to talk to my employers when I was due to retirement at 65, and they were very good and gave me another 3 years' work, which I was able to take out another mortgage with the company to pay it off. End of story, all dusted. But it was the thing to do at the time when you were taking out mortgages.
My mum and dad didn't have an interest only, but they had the endowment policy, and it was the thing, wasn't it? It was, hey, listen, you could afford to go on holiday for the rest of your life with this money. Buy a yacht.
That's right.
And they had an incredible shortfall. Who do you blame, Barry?
Well, it was the markets again, but the insurance probably the insurance companies, two things. First of all, when they were being sold, the brokers were able to get their money commission up front, and then later in life the markets just collapsed, and we wanted to give them good advice.
Barry, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to Sheridan in Bedford. Morning, Sheridan.
Good morning, Ian.
Now, have you got an interest-only mortgage?
Yes, I do have. I got my marriage split up in 2005, and I had to sell my house. So I had 3 children, moved to a house close to where I worked and where my kids could still stay at the same school, and I could manage to be single mum.
Yeah.
And it was in poor decorative repair. So the only way to afford anything was to actually go interest only. And I sort of thought, well, last resort, I'll have my teacher's pension pot to help me.
Oh,
if
gosh,
nothing
well.
happened.
Yeah.
Well, of course, we know what's happened to that. And then I sort of thought, well, it's going to be 2 years only. And I had a loan that I was paying off as well. So divorce is an expensive thing. So I thought, well, okay, I'll give it 2 years. And actually, we're talking 7 years later. Still on interest only because there's kids going through to uni. And the difference is you're looking at about $485 a month with interest only to close on to $800 if it was capital and interest.
Okay. So but you know you're going to be in trouble in, 18 years' time?
I do, and I've actually taken steps. I just decided, well, this is it. I'm going to cut my losses. Luckily, I haven't made as much money as I've put into the house.
Right.
But actually, I've sold up, and next in June, I'm moving to a house in an area that isn't as nice. And a lot of people turn around and go, oh, why do you want to move there? You know, what are you doing that for? And I sort of think, well, actually, I'm being sensible because I'm reducing my mortgage now by £40,000.
Wow.
And I'll be able to afford the capital and interest. And the house doesn't need an enormous amount of work.
So you're being very sensible. Were you aware of the potential risks when you took out the interest-only mortgage?
To an extent, you sort of think, oh, it's going to get better. You know,
Yeah.
Human beings, we put ourselves in the situation, think, oh yeah, I'll just think about that now because I'm fairly young. But 7 years ago, and now I'm in my 40s, and I'm sort of actually thinking, I'm going to be sensible here and try and plan for my 60s. I think to an extent we are. I was warned. People say, "Oh, you should have an ISA, or you should have this," and all I could think of in my head is it's going to be short term,
Yep.
and actually I'll make a profit when I sell the house. And I think a lot of people thought, yeah, it's a great way to do something up, fix it up and make some money.
Well, Sheridan, I appreciate your call. We can put all of this now to our next guest, Rory Joseph, financial expert from Hertfordshire-based JLM Mortgage Services. Rory, I'm not sure how much you heard of Sheridan then, our last caller, but she saw it as a short-term project and a way of making some money.
No, absolutely. I heard the tail end, actually, of her conversation. I thought that she was actually a really good caller and is very, very typical of, I'd say, most of the people who find themselves in this situation. I think interest-only mortgages, and certainly, obviously, as you can imagine, I talk to lots of clients who have interest-only mortgages. Nearly all of them thought of them as short-term fixes, particularly those who don't have a repayment strategy in place, thought, well, I'll do this for a year or two, things are a bit tight, and then when things get better, I'll switch to repayment, or I'll start up an ICE or whatever it may be. And I'd say those are the people now who are kind of a bit trapped in where they're in their current situations.
Are these mortgages still being offered?
They are, but lenders are extremely strict now. So as a rule of thumb, you'd need to have at least 25% deposit, but quite often 40% deposit.
Wow.
They would check that the whatever strategy you had in place actually existed
Yes.
and had been in place for a little while.
And not
already.
just hoping that things will get better in 2 or 3 years' time.
No, exactly right. I mean, I have to say, I had a quick look at the report actually, and I've got a bit of sympathy for those people who took interest-only mortgages. I think many of them took them actually as a kind of fairly well-planned-out strategy. Not everyone, by all means, but I think many of them took them as a well-planned-out strategy with the view of, you know, I can afford an interest-only mortgage. It will give me and my family a nice place to live for the next X number of years. And in 20 years' time, yes, I may have to move down market and may have to sell the house and buy something smaller, but it's still cheaper than renting. And assuming prices go up over, say, a 20-year period, actually, I've saved money on renting and I've probably made a little bit of money on house prices.
Rory, we've got about 45 seconds. If people are worried, and more and more people are starting to realise that actually 5, 6, 7 years' time there could be a problem, what advice would you give to them?
There's a really quick fix. So the first fix is phone your current lender and say, I'd like to change to repayment. How much will that be? If you can't afford to change the whole thing to repayment, then normally you can give them a monthly payment you can afford and they'll change part of your loan to repayment. And that has the great benefit of being free. Option number 2 is to extend the length of your mortgage. So say you've got 10 years left. Depending on your age, extend it to 15 or 20 years. You can afford repayments because it's better to pay something off rather than nothing.
Rory Joseph, thank you very much indeed. Rory Joseph, financial expert from Hertfordshire-based JLM Mortgage Services. Well, there we go. It always struck me as odd. I'm starting to understand a little more, actually, by speaking to those last 2 callers, why people perhaps would consider going for the interest-only mortgage. But I remember when it was presented to me in the bank, and I was scratching my head, saying, I don't really see the benefit. Oh, it'll save you money. They actually said, oh, it'll save you money. Well, yeah, in the short term it will, but what happens in 25 years? Oh, then you have to pay for the house. It made literally no sense to me whatsoever. And it turns out it made no sense to a lot of other people as well. Right, let's get the travel news now. Here's Mr. Adam Glynn.
Herts and Bucks travel.
BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you, Ian. Things looking pretty decent on most routes at the minute. M25 delays, of course, still very much present. Almost ever present. Clockwise is looking slow from junction 22 at London Colney to 24 at Potters Bar. Anti-clockwise slow from Chorleywood to the M40. Now, we've got a bit of a queue on the A5 in Dunstable. It's busy, but it is at least moving near to the A505. And in Houghton Regis, the High Street's starting to look slow near to Bedford Road as well. A1 at Roxton, the Black Cat roundabout, is queuing. And we've also got a bit of slow traffic as you go past Sandy and the Sandy roundabout. If you're using the M40 toward London, junction 5 at Stokenchurch to 4 at High Wycombe is definitely slow at present. And the M1 looking a little bit busy now on the northbound side as you go past Luton Airport at junction 10. Looking at the train departure boards, and right now across the 3 counties, no major problems or delays. It's been a pretty decent morning for the rails. Adam Glynn, BBC Three Counties
Thanks
Radio.
very much, Adam. Do go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/BBC3CR. Have a little chitty chat with the people. Be rude about the show, be rude about them. Don't be rude about me. Personally, I'll delete them. Katie, thanks very much indeed. Right, back tomorrow at 6. JVS is up next. Here we go.
Getting beds, hearts and bucks talking.
This is BBC Three Counties Radio.
Thank you, Ian. Good morning. Welcome to the JVS show. I'm Jonathan Vernon-Smith. It's Thursday, and on today's Big Phone-In, I'm asking, should people charged with sex crimes be given anonymity? The Independent newspaper has carried out